TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah Podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark savage.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark savage stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Yo, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? You heard the man. This is the TruthSeekah Podcast. I'm your host, TruthSeekah. Excited, delighted to be with you guys. Again, as always, man, we're going to be getting into some spiritual dialogue, discussing all things spiritual. So nothing is left unexplored. We try to cover everything. And so you can, listen into the conversation and hear these experiences from the people themselves. And a lot of times, you can learn from other people's experiences and what they're going through. And it'll save you a lot of heartache and hassle. Let you know, one is the biggest thing, let you know that you're not alone going through this stuff. There's other people experiencing very similar things that you are, and you're not crazy. You're in good company, good people. So that's what we're going to be speaking about today. So yeah, I'm going to get into this really quick. I want to say a thank you to everyone who has been supporting my work via Patreon. Again, this is a listener supported show. Could not do this without your help. Thank you for believing in me and the platform that God has given me. This ministry, this outreach, what we do here is very beneficial in you guys sharing the harvest of everything that makes this successful. I could not do it without you. Go as far as to say I would not do it without you. Thank you guys for believing in my work. If you'd like to partner with me, please head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. And there you get access to my entire discography of work, 200 plus songs. You get access to our Thursday night School of the Mystics, different tiers, different levels of giving. All my meditations, there's a level where you get all my guided meditations and activations available for download there. Thursday night School of the Mystics, again, which is the community aspect of what we're building. Sunday morning seer class, if we can actually tap in together, lead us into a guided meditation into the presence and throne room of God. Very powerful encounters there, learning how to grow in your own intuition, spiritual abilities that God has given you. Very important. So if you're looking for community, that's it. Check out my Patreon. Shout out to some of the latest patrons that who have stepped up to the plate, and I believe in the vision. So I'm going to give a shout out to Christina Kramer. Bless you, sister. Thank you so much for believing in the work. Mark and Holly Zapita, shout out to you guys. Letitia Young and Marino Torres. Bless you guys. Thank you for partnering with me. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Today is going to be a very special podcast. I've been, ever since I booked this show, I've been looking forward to the conversation. And really, I pushed this conversation up because I'm booked out for about 2 months on Tuesday. So I've been doing Tuesdays and Thursdays with my show, but haven't done a lot of solo episodes. So I said, you know what, let me just book Tuesdays and leave Thursdays to the solo episodes. But I had an open slot today, and I was like, you know what, let me make this happen because I don't want to talk to him too much from now. I want to go ahead and, get this in today because I know this is going to be a very important show. Welcome to the podcast, Davyon, Devin, whatever your name. Welcome to the podcast, man. How's it going?
Thank you.
How are you, man?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
Doing good, man. Davyon. I told you I was going to butcher your name. I always do that.
Yes.
Even
you
though
can call me D for short. It's fine.
D. What up, D?
Yeah.
Davyon, man, we're going to get into your story, bro. Who you are, what you bring to the table. We just had a beautiful hour and a half, 2-hour conversation on your podcast. So I want to direct traffic over there if anybody wants to hear. We really got into some deep conversation over there. So make sure y'all check out his YouTube channel, which is
Conscious TV, and that is conscious with a Z on the end. So that's CONSCIOUZ TV.
It'll come up.
My own YouTube name.
Yeah, it'll come
Conscious
up.
TV with the Z on the end. It is over at YouTube, and that channel is a hot mess. There's lots of commentary about politics, pop culture, spirituality. So it's a mixed bag of nuts. So it's going to be like a little bit of everything for everyone. So you just kind of have to sift through and find your flow on my channel.
For sure, man. I first heard about you through Larry Reed. I had Larry and Terrell on my podcast over a year ago, maybe 2 years now. Really good episode. And then I seen you interviewing them on your podcast or on your social media, and then I was able to check you out. Very your persona, your look precedes you before people get to know you. You're very much into fashion. You're very much into your aesthetic and look, and it's very powerful. You have a lot of pictures and stuff like that, and so it's like, wow, this guy. Let me look into him, man. And then we have a lot of similar tattoos and spiritual symbols and sacred geometry. And I'm like, let me check this guy out, man. So started checking out your stuff, and if you're cool with Larry Reed and those guys, I knew that we would have a great conversation. So I added you back then, and then some people in our community, mutual friends, it kind of happened through synchronicity of you checking out my music or something, and then me looking into your work, and then our mutual friends and people in the audience kind of set it up like, hey, you should interview him, and then they reach out to you and say, hey, you should research TruthSeekah, check him out. And at the same time, we had already been looking into each other's work. So shout out to, I believe his name is Ashe. Is that how you would pronounce it?
Yep.
One of our
D-Rock on YouTube.
D-Rock. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been a member of the audience and both of our circles. So really cool stuff that we're cross-pollinating with people. And many of us are doing that. You know what I'm saying? And that's something, even doing that we didn't learn in the church, because you came out of the church realm as well. In the church realm, you had to kind of have your followers, have your supporters, and hold them close and not let anybody take them from you, or not let them listen to anybody else's false doctrine or belief. Did you come from that as well?
I came from a very religious family. Like, I come from a long line of prophets and deacons and deaconess. My grandparents raised all 13 of my uncles and aunts, including my mom, in the church. They participated in choir. My grandfather was also like a pastor. So I've been involved in church like my whole life. When my mother had me and my brother at that point in her own life, she wasn't as deeply committed to the church. So church wasn't something that was forced upon me, but it was certainly something that we were exposed to. Christianity and religion and Christ was something that was a heavy part of our prayer life in my home and in my family. So Christianity has always been there. And for the most part, I had a wonderful experience with religion up until I started to mature as a young man, and I started to develop my own intellectual capacity. I started to critically think about things, and then other supernatural things started happening in my life that kind of pushed me into evolving spiritually and metaphysically. So yes, coming from that whole world of church has been a very interesting dynamic to be a part of. And it's even more interesting to see the dynamic of the church today. So yes.
Was that now, you know what I'm saying, where you are today, and now we're some years removed from that type of structure. We deal with people who are in it. We deal with more people who have come out of it or trying to get out of it. Did it do more harm than good for you?
You know, that's an interesting question because, you know, at the time that you are transitioning into or out of anything, things feel chaotic, things feel bad. But in retrospect, no. I mean, those things were essential. When I started going through sleep paralysis, which I had no understanding of at the time, D-Rock, who has been my good friend for the past 10 years, he reached out to me and he started illuminating me about how sleep paralysis is a precursor to out-of-body experiences, which I had never heard of before. So I had grew up under the impression that sleep paralysis was connected to the old hag riding you. So I thought this was something demonic. That was my attitude toward it. My family was very aware of this. They were a prayerful family, banishing demons and devils, and nothing was stopping this phenomenon from taking place. So one day I took him up on some feedback he gave me in terms of how I could open myself up to sleep paralysis to get to the other side. And I did. And it changed my freaking life because I had never been out of my body. I had never experienced the level of consciousness and clarity that I did in that type of a state. And just seeing my body external to me, it literally shook me. Like it shook me. Like I remember being so shook that I was slammed back into my body and I woke up profusely like upset and crying. Like I called my grandmother at 4:30 in the morning and I could not stop crying. Like my whole brain felt like it was just confused, like this earth-shattering reality that, I mean, I have been taught my whole life, I'm not my body, that we have a soul, we have a spirit, but to actually experience that in real time and to experience that with a full conscious capacity is something that is very shocking to the egoic mind. So when I started going through that, I reached out to the church. I was a part of the church that I lived to next door, actually. And the pastor actually told me that he didn't even want anything to do with the experiences. He didn't want to hear about the experiences. And this type of rejection was consistent in reaching out to Christian people about what was happening to me. So that prompted me to get online and to figure out what I was going through, which led me to Buddhism, to shamanism, to the New Age, where they had more specific information about astral projection, about OBEs and NDEs. And then that kind of also opened my mind about where God is in the world, and that God and metaphysics and spirituality is not simply isolated to a particular religion, and that there's these universal elements of our human and our beingness that we all experience as spiritual and human beings. And, you know, depending on what religion of faith you are a part of, sometimes the information is going to be in favor of what you are experiencing. Sometimes the information is going to lack. So looking back in retrospect, it's hard to say it did more harm than good, because I feel like I wouldn't even be as open-minded and be as expanded as I was if the church had not shunned me the way that they did when metaphysical gifts started developing in my life. So at that time, it was hard because I loved the church. I loved church people. I was familiar with that, and it kind of all fell apart, but it all made 360 now as a 33-year-old adult.
Starting your ministry at 33 years old.
Started my ministry, absolutely.
For sure, man. I know it's hard, bro. And I went through very similar experiences, prophetic dreams, and having those spiritual abilities and stuff that were starting to cultivate in a spiritual atmosphere, because that was the church. I went to a spiritual church. They believed in signs and wonders, speaking in tongues, healing, angelic, and the angels appearing at worship services, and all that kind of stuff. So when God has given you these spiritual abilities and giftings, you feel like you're in this place where you can grow and learn in that, and you need somebody to teach you. But then when you are vocal about it, because you may be experiencing spiritual abilities that the pastor, obviously in this situation, had no idea what you were experiencing. He didn't know what to tell you. And for those of you who are listening who are still in the church, you got to do better. You know what I'm saying? Because this is why we're thriving right now. It's because we're picking up your slack. Those young people who are having all types of encounters. Their ancestors are visiting them. Demons are getting on them in the middle of the night. They're receiving angelic visitations. They're having prophetic dreams about the future, and you don't know what to tell them. Guess what? If they get online and look this stuff up, the occult, the witchcraft circles, they'll gladly accept you and tell you what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So you people got to do better. We get made fun of, and I'm sure you still do too, about being out there. But you're identifying with the people who are marginalized, who are looked over and kind of pushed to the side. But those are the very people that Christ forsook the 99 to go after the one. So, yeah, you guys got to do better, man. Just as a side note. But we see that because we have a natural empathy for those people, because we know what it feels like to say, no, I think the devil got you. I think the devil was pulling you out of your body and Jesus snapped you back into it. This weird, like, really? No, I don't feel like that happened. No, that's what happened, because they don't have any understanding of the spirit realm. That's why we talk about how the spirit of the prophets are subject unto the prophets. You can't just go to your pastor and say, hey, I have a smoky mist appearing at the foot of my bed every night that's telling me things, imparting wisdom to me. What is it? Oh, that's a demon. No, it's not a demon. Yeah, it's a demon. Like, hold on. We need to talk to people who have been through this stuff so they can break it down and show you, first of all, scripturally, all of this stuff is in the Bible and painted in a beautiful light. But we've been told, so much fear and hysteria in the church and stuff, man. So shout out to the people who still have their faith, you know what I'm saying, who still love God, who still have a love for the truth after going through that, because, man, these people will run you through the wash, man. You're lucky that you still have a faith, but you're lucky you still are alive, even too, right? What was it going through learning about your sexuality and who you were in the church? Like, how did that come into play? Like, how early was those urges there? Was it something you always knew? Where were you at with your sexuality in the church?
So, what's interesting about sexuality is I knew that there was something going on before I even developed language. Like, I can remember being a very, very, very young adolescent child, not even having concepts for sexuality and friendship and platonicness and sensuality and all of that. But as a young, and I'm talking about like 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, like, there was a particular, I like to call it magnetism, that I had toward the same sex that wasn't there toward the opposite sex. Like, there was a distinct vibration or feeling or drawing to the same sex that, like I said, it wasn't there with the opposite sex. So growing up, I didn't know anything was different about that until being further introduced to the church and certain doctrines came into play.
told that it wasn't, right?
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I'm gay. That's what this is. And then I had to figure out what that was. But a lot of my learning and a lot of the perspective about sexuality came from a lot of religion, literature, and ideology and theology. So not only was I gay, but I happened to be an abomination that God couldn't stand, and I was going to bust hell wide open. So that became another struggle for me as a man, and it became another struggle for me spiritually. And when I got around my junior year of high school, I just remember having a full-on meltdown one day after I came home from school, and I just literally tore my bedroom apart. I ripped the posters off the wall. I broke tables. I had this total meltdown, and I was very angry at God. I was very, I was uncomfortable at the idea of calling him father, because I'm thinking to myself, what type of a father would position their son this way in life and then put the burden on me to do something about whatever the hell all this was.
Yeah.
And then the consequence of not properly and successfully doing that would be eternal damnation.
Yeah.
That literally just blew me into smithereens. I mean, so that was a struggle. And you about to ask a question? I can
No,
see.
I mean, obviously I have a lot of questions and comments, but I want to go deeper into that. Like, you thought God hated you. You were told that God hated you.
And
you
I
might not
believe
have felt that to begin with. It was a natural experience, but then you learned, somebody had to tell you that God hated you.
Yeah.
And what that did to you. So that process of, how old were you when this stuff happened?
You mean when the meltdown happened?
Yeah.
I was a junior in high school, so that was around like 16, 17.
Now, was this something that you told family members, or they just seen you a little bit more effeminate, more, I mean, what happened? How did you come out?
I was different. I was never like effeminate. I was never like the, hey girl, like I was never that
Above
type of a gay. I was just a very artistic person. So people could have made the assumption that I was gay, because sometimes artistic people get called that anyway, even if they don't identify as same-sex attracted. And my family was reasonably supportive. Like, even though they are deeply Christian, my family loves me and they respect me because of the type of person I am. So I didn't have to go through too much with them. Most of what I went through just had to do with my own relationship to God that I was really battling with, because it was his opinion that I was more concerned with than anything else. So a lot of my strife was directly with the Creator as it related to this issue. And it really tore me up, because at that time of my life, I had gotten saved at 13, but I had not really lived that. So I was rededicating my life around the 16, 17 year part of my life. And so I was taking my relationship very seriously to God. And so, but this was something that wasn't being reconciled at the time. And I just felt deeply uncomfortable in my Christianity. The church understood that I couldn't be gay. You can't be gay and be Christian. So I had all this confliction about my love for God, but I'm a same gender loving man.
Yeah.
And this is just not blending. Like, there's things that are out of sync and out of order here. So yeah, it was.
Did you ever be a part of a youth group or a church service where, can you turn me down still a little bit? Or put an earbud in? Because the echo
Turn
is
it down.
Either turn me down or put an earbud in. The echo's kind of crazy right now.
I don't even have an earbud. And
maybe move it away from the microphone. Is it close to the mic?
Let me.
It might help it out a little bit, because the echo's pretty bad.
Can you still hear echo?
Hello. It's a little bit better.
Echo?
It's a little bit better.
Okay. Is it still an echo?
1, 2, 3. It's a slight echo, yeah.
I don't know why there's an echo. Okay,
it's picking up through the microphone, like it's coming back.
I just took the microphone out. How's that?
I don't know what happened. Yeah, I can't hear you now. We can edit this in post.
Edit the echo?
Okay. No, I can't. Okay, that's better. That's better, whatever you did.
Let me just try to point it downward or something.
All right, so the question is, have you ever been at church or part of a youth group and people know you're gay, the pastor knows you're gay, and they illustrate a sermon for you? They make sure that they go in on this homosexual spirit just for you, and you just know that he's talking about you, like taking jabs almost? You ever been anything like that?
I can't say that I ever felt particularly targeted in the church, but anytime those verses would come up or things around that type of a sermon would come up, obviously as a same-sex loving person. You're going to identify personally with it. So I never felt though it was something that was intentionally being done, but obviously whenever it happened, it didn't really matter because I had judgments about my own sexuality. So if you're teaching on that in a negative way or in a condemning way, then I'm going to take it personal regardless, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to be bothersome and burdensome irregardless.
Now, coming to terms with your relationship with Christ, and you're like reading the Bible and you're hearing sermons that doesn't go together. You can't be a Christian and be gay, right? You hear that. What happened? Did you just say, okay, I'm not gay anymore? Did you try to pray the gay away? Did you receive laying on of hands and they rebuked that devil out of you? Did they anoint you with oil? Did you fast and pray for it to leave? What happened?
From 17 to 21, I initiated total rebuke of my sexual orientation. I was abstaining from dating. At that point, I had not even had sex anyway. Wow. So there was no sexual practice of homosexuality in my life. And church was every Sunday. I'm talking about doing everything from having people literally pray over me at church, lay hands on me, going to deliverance services. Yeah.
Pray the gay away is what they call it.
Gospel music on at night. I mean, praying, like being very prayerful and steadfast, constantly fasting. And this went on for 4 years total. And I'm talking about total commitment, openness to God, changing me, believing that God felt this way, being completely open to his will for me to be a heterosexual male, and me just doing everything I was instructed to do by the church, everything that I thought to do by just reading the scriptures myself, and just being committed because I didn't want to go to hell, and I didn't want to dissatisfy God, and I didn't want any negative connotation as it related to my relationship to Christ. So 4 years straight, it was hardcore.
Praying, fasting, praying the gay away. That's the thing that a lot of people try to do.
Absolutely.
There's many different ways that people have approached this, and a lot of people have they can't cope. It's a very hard thing. Like I said, you feel like you've been told you're an abomination to God, and God hates you, or God hates your sin, or whatever that you love. These weird things that we hear. As far as was your family members and members of the church trying to go above and beyond to hook you up with other girls? Like, hey, check her out. Isn't she beautiful? And trying to play hookup. Did that happen?
No. I've never came off as a totally. I've never came off as a very submissive person. So people, I didn't have to deal with people being pushy because I have a very strong presence, and I'm not really ever in a position to be pushed over. So nobody ever really forced anything. People kind of just allowed me to be where it is I needed to be within this. And they were honestly just happy that I was at least convinced that I should be straight. So we kind of just dealt with that alone. But I know I didn't have anybody trying to get me to have sex with a woman or to date women.
No, I say that because I've been a part of many Christian circles to where there's a gay guy who comes in, he meets Jesus, has his life changed, and they tell him he can't be gay. He knows that because of his religious upbringing, and so he's trying to abandon that, and then they go above and beyond to hook him up with a girl, and they almost try to make them get married. I've seen this, like, oh yeah, y'all, this is the Lord hooked y'all up, and they really pulled some strings to, get this guy, and they let him share his testimony on how he used to be gay. But all the time, I've never, and I want to say this on record, I believe in the power of God for do anything he wants to do, but I've never, and I may be wrong, but I've never seen any of these gay guys who have repented and turned away from that lifestyle, how they're not still gay. Now there's different people who, there's different priests and stuff who have taken a vow of celibacy. They understand that they're a gay man and they're attracted to men, and they know that it's one of their ailments they feel as being a priest. So they've just took a vow of celibacy to never act upon that. But these men are still gay. Like, so this church group almost like forced a marriage and almost made a good friend of mine get married to a gay man, a female. Yeah. And that would have been a lot of heartache for both of them to force a marriage. And there's a lot of that going on now. You can tell, and we know it, just the whole term of being on the down low. Down low is all of these straight men who are so-called straight. They're in marriages. They're families. They're deacons. They're pastors. I mean, look at Eddie Long, a great, not a great, really a bad example, but there's men who are in a heterosexual relationship or marriage because they have a position or persona to play, but inwardly, they genuinely are attracted to the same sex, and it's something that a lot of people deal with. And I have really good friends who have been through that, and they, they pray against it because they've been told that, hey, you can't be gay and be at our church. You can't be a minister. You can't be a Christian and be gay. So they've prayed against it. They fasted. They've tried to go on dates with beautiful women, and they're just not attracted to these women. And I don't know anyone who has just left that, man. It's a weird dichotomy. They tried to pray the gay away, and it did not work. So you're in a community of people, like, I know. So there's like a gay community. I don't know if Larry Reed and those guys are gay. I feel like they are. I don't know. No, I know they run in some gay circles.
Larry is a heterosexual male. He's married, got kids, and he's currently dating a beautiful woman now, and he identifies as a heterosexual male.
He runs in a lot of gay circles, though, because there's gay churches, right? There's churches that accept
there are affirmative churches that heterosexual people label as gay churches, when these are just inclusive churches, which is what all church is supposed to be technically.
So where are you now? Going through that, figuring out who you are, trying to pray the gay away, it doesn't leave, maybe taking a vow of celibacy, fighting your flesh, this is I'm saying, you're a young man, love God, still love God to this day. Where do you love him even more today? How did you make it through that and still be a spiritual person? First
of all, some of the things you just said about the download community and the way that the church deals with sexuality is something that I definitely want to revisit in this conversation after I answer your question. So after this long, strenuous battle, praying the gay away, fighting the gay demon, fighting the gay spirit, I came to another breakdown point, because now I've broken down about being gay, but now I've taken responsibility for being gay, and I'm doing what I need to do to not be gay. But now I'm 4 years in. I'm exhausted spiritually. I'm exhausted emotionally. I'm exhausted mentally. I'm just fucking exhausted. And can I curse on this show? Is this
YouTube doesn't like it, but it's okay if you do.
Okay, all right. I'm exhausted, and I remember being in my bedroom, and I just had a conversation with Christ. I said, Christ, I'm just at the end of my ropes. I'm tired. I don't know what to do. And to be honest, I'd rather just not live at all than to deal with this for the rest of my life. Like, if something is not going to give, because there was nothing moving internally in me this past 4 years. There wasn't interest in women developing. My desires for men had not changed. I was just someone who was abstaining from practicing it and experiencing it romantically and sexually, but the desire was still there. And I was still very uncomfortable with that, because Christ said to the adulterer, if you have so committed lust in your heart, then you have already committed adultery, or that a man is what he think of. And so I was very aware that just because I wasn't acting on my sexual orientation, to me, didn't mean that God wasn't still judging me for being gay. So it wasn't enough to just not practice being gay. I needed to just not be gay. Like, I needed that thing to dissipate, to be eradicated, to be removed. I needed a factory reset on my soul. Something went wrong somewhere. I'm willing to unwrong it. Yeah. I'm asking for whatever that is that we're calling God to do that. And so at that point, I just sat down in my room one day, and I just honestly opened my heart, and I communicated my frustration to Christ. I told Christ that I just didn't want to do this anymore, that I was just over this. And I literally was just flipping through the Bible, and I opened a page in the book of Matthews, and here it was. Jesus was having a dialogue with his disciples about the state of marriage and what happens to those who are married and or have remarried in this life in terms of the afterlife. And Jesus had this really weird explanation or response to the question. And he started speaking about a people that I had never heard of. And once I did my research later, I understood exactly why the church had never taught on these people. But Jesus is cited saying that there are some men who are made this way. There are some men who choose to be this way. And there are some men who are born this way from their mother's wombs. And the term he used to categorize these men were eunuchs. Now, I had never even heard this verse before. I never even heard anything about eunuchs at all. So I went to the glossary in the back of the Bible to look up the term eunuch, and it said political official, that a eunuch was a political official, which didn't really make any level of sense, especially as it related to the men that are born that way from their mother's womb. You can't be born any more of a political official than you can be born a fireman. So I had to do a actual historical word study on the term eunuch, and come to find out cross-culturally in most cultures, the term eunuch was very synonymous to a lot of other things, but essentially it described three different men in all cultures, whether that's the Native American community, whether that's the Jewish community, whether that's the African religious systems, that eunuchs were men who had taken a vow of celibacy. That could be Jesus himself, who, according to the canon we have, is never said to have experienced or engaged the heterosexual paradigm. That could have been Paul himself too, who was also widowed. That would also categorize nuns and priests, people who commit themselves for religious purposes away from sex and human relationship to live for God. And then the second category of eunuch men, the men who are made that way by other men, were the men who underwent the Jewish castration ritual, because we know that that was a custom and a tradition of its own time. And then there came the men that were born that way. And come to find out that most cultures understand that eunuchs are oftentimes effeminate men. They are same-sex attracted men. These men oftentimes occupy very prestige positions in the harems because they were trusted around the king's women and concubines. These men didn't pose as a threat. And the term born from their mother's womb was something that was also stated to be natural eunuchs. And natural eunuchs were perceived to be people who were castrated internally. You didn't have to sever any testicle. They didn't have to undergo any particular surgery or alteration in order to not identify with the opposite sex. And so that blew my head. And that was a whole nother aspect of what kind of liberated me, at least within the eyes of Christ, about my sexuality, because Christ is going on this whole spiel. And Christ's own statements his own statements he knew were controversial, because he said to the crowd, "Let whomever can receive what I'm saying here today, receive this." He knew that what he was saying was against the grain, that it was difficult, that not everyone was going to be able to accept what he was saying, but whoever could, whoever it was for, whoever had the ability to receive what it is that I'm giving you guys as it relates to this, receive it. And I opened my heart at that moment and I received it. And I literally felt a bolt of electricity from the bottom of my feet move up out of the top of my head. And at that moment, I literally experienced freedom. And I never looked back after that. From that point forward, me and sexuality, the door was closed. It was a concluded issue, period on it, never revisited again. I was gone. I was free. I moved on to other things spiritually in my walk with Christ, but sexuality had been reconciled through Jesus's words.
Wow. Deep, man. Really deep. And I think that the reason I wanted to have this, I'm really looking forward to this discussion for many reasons. I have gay people who are in my community who love the podcast, who love my music, and I've helped them. But as far as me, it's just been something within the last couple of years that I've been able to. I'm in the Bible, but I'm in Alabama. You know what I'm saying? In the backwoods, I really am. So they don't play with gay stuff around here, right? And especially being in the Christian realm. So. And it really didn't hit us until we had to address it to my wife on the job. Had a girl start working with them that they loved. They loved this girl. She's awesome. It's like, hey, I think she might be gay. And then they're like huddled up, like, who's got to tell her? Who's got to tell her she has to repent? One of us has to tell her. You know what I'm saying? We have to share the gospel with her and all of this kind of stuff. And she had heard that stuff all of her life. It didn't change the way that she felt, And then so like, okay, are we going to be friends with this girl? Like, am I okay with my wife hanging out with her? Like, where did, and my friends would be like, I wouldn't trust my wife around. I'm like, these are things that I have to come to terms with as a man, and even as a family. And what do we believe in letting gay people in our home? Just from what we've been told, I know that sounds super homophobic, but this is the truth of just kind of getting over the fact that where do they stand with God, and can we be friends and stuff? And so that was a huge turning point, is essentially being friends with a gay person. You know what I'm saying? And then learning that way, or being friends with a Muslim, being friends with someone different. There's a thing that we refer to as spiritual homosexuality as well. And that's where you only hang around and associate with those people who believe in what you believe in. They look just like you. They sound just like you. You're a spiritual homosexual. You're not open to anybody else's belief system. You're just close the door to us four and no more. And that's all you associate with. And so just the gay thing is one thing, but then it expands through spirituality and through love, that I'm able to deal righteously with every person. That was a big thing for us, right? And me and my wife and coming to terms with. And like I said, like, I have a lot of gay people in my community, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. I want to, because there's been little times that I kind of look back and I'm like, man, I don't want to marginalize those people who are already marginalized. I want to let them know that they're welcome. I want to let them know that God loves them regardless of who they're attracted to. I'm not attracted to the same sex. I don't know what that is. And you have people giving you advice who don't know what it's like to burn for in your heart towards the same sex. They don't know what that feels like. And how can you tell somebody how to turn that off or turn that on? That's a natural instinct for them, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So my question to that is, when heterosexual people say, I don't understand what it means to be gay.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that you actually do understand what it means to be gay, because you understand what it is to have a sexual orientation. You don't have to be same-sex attracted to understand how innate your own sexual attraction is to the opposite sex is to your being. So essentially, if you are a heterosexual man who's attracted to women, then you know how intrinsic a gay man's sexual attraction to other men is to him, because of your own intrinsic attraction to women. And so if heterosexual people are going to begin to empathize or to understand what two-spirited people or eunuch people or homosexual people are going through, then just essentially put yourself in their shoes and say, if I was in a position where I was being taught that my love for the opposite sex is not natural, then what would be the process of you undoing that, honestly? Could you imagine even beginning the process of trying to undo your own natural affections toward the opposite sex?
Exactly. That's how simple it is for you.
That's
just
how
like
simple it is.
Just the opposite. Let me ask you this. I know this is kind of prying a little bit, but there's, everybody feels like they have it figured out. People who've never even had a conversation with a person who attracted to the same sex, but they have it all figured out, right? You've got those people, especially in the church. Were you molested or touched inappropriately as a young child?
No. And I'm so glad that has never been my experience. I've never been abused at all. Like, I was literally, I had the most amazing childhood I could have really ever asked for. So no type of sexual abuse, no type of rape, molestation. Nobody was touching me. My stepfather and my mom were pretty conservative, even though they weren't heavy into the church at that time. So they were really big on not allowing us to watch explicit movies where there's lots of foul language, not being exposed to overt sexual material and content. So we had a rather conservative, pure upbringing, me and my brother. So none of that was my experience.
Wow, that's awesome too. Because you hear, it happens a lot. I know of many gay people. Well, that is their story. They were touched, and they would say confused early on, or maybe open to sexuality at a young age, and it was a weird type of sexuality. Their babysitter or uncle was sneaking in the room. That's demonic stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's not the same thing, but there's a lot of people who I know in my life who that's their story, right? A lot of gay friends and family members, they were molested. So I want to make sure that there could be a link there, but it's not specific to that, right?
That link. Like, can we talk about that link real quick?
Yeah.
So the church is never going to understand what the impact of molestation is on those who have had that experience, really, because the church already has a narrative, which is that it's wrong. So if you have someone who is born under a religious idea that a particular sexual orientation is wrong, and then you are being violated sexually, then for you're going to attribute your orientation, your bisexuality, your homosexuality to that particular event in your life, when really, in fact, natural born homosexual people are also molested, but they don't have the luxury of being able to say that, or they're further confused about whether their orientation is natural or not, because there's already a single negative contrasting ideology that already says, this is wrong, period. And so that can cause a lot of psychological damage, because it causes you to not actually get to the bottom of your orientation, and you find yourself suppressing things and demonizing parts of you that are never going to go anywhere, because you are already under judgment, you are already under condemnation, and now you have the violation as a reinforcement to definitely reject this aspect of your orientation. Now, I also want to say this. A lot of people bring up the fact that there are gays who proclaim that they've been delivered. I actually do believe...
Delivered with the T.
Delivered. I actually believe that people can be delivered from homosexuality, simply because in my metaphysical understanding is that oftentimes when there's been a sexual violation of any kind, the spirit of perversion actually can manifest within a person's life. And when that goes unchecked, a person can develop natural feelings and attractions that are not innate to them. This is not a part of their natural makeup. And there's a difference between, and Jesus said it perfectly, eunuch men who are born that way and eunuch men who are made that way by other men. And you can insert violators in that, abusers,
wow.
Women and men who are made that way.
They become gay. They weren't born gay, but there are men who become gay, right?
They were meant to become gay. And ironically, most of the gays who attest to being delivered have been molested, have been sexually abused, have been mentally and emotionally abused. So I just find that to be an interesting correlation. But I do believe that there are people operating within bisexuality, lesbianism, and homosexuality that are not naturally attracted to the opposite sex, but because of unreconciled abuse in their life, there are incubus and succubus and other spiritual activity that has been able to latch on to their consciousness, to their psyche, to their mental state, and kind of incubate themselves into that person and come through the expression of sexuality. I even remember Juanita Bynum. She's huge in the Black church. Yeah. She talked about how during her promiscuity as a young woman, where she was loose as a goose, sleeping with every man under the sun, that when she had gotten back into the church, she had to actually pray the spirit of conversion off of her, because she found that the more promiscuous she got, the more perverted her sexual fantasies became.
Yeah.
She desired more aggressive sex, more explicit sex. And when she challenged that in her recommitment to Christ, all of those feelings, all of that desire, all of that fantasy and explicitness actually left her. So this is something that not only impacts homosexuals, it just impacts any person who's been abused in any kind of way, that because we're not just human, you know. And when you are disturbed emotionally and you're disturbed mentally, you're literally opening yourselves up to frequencies and vibrations that harbor entities and consciousness and minds that don't work in alignment with whatever God's will is for you.
Man, that's powerful. I'm
sure the comment section is letting me have it right now.
No, they're not.
I'm not even reading the comment section.
No.
Right
I'm
now.
reading the comments now, and I want to. Larry D. Reed is with us, and he says that he heard in the spirit that his name was mentioned. The spirit told him his name was mentioned,
right,
so he jumped
which
in
means that someone sent him a link.
Exactly. No, but he's saying a lot of good things about you, and a lot of good things about, he says molestation and rape can affect sexuality, but your orientation is what it is. That he doesn't believe that it can affect your orientation. Which, I mean, there's so much to that, of just opening up things and you know, it messing you up. There's women who they cry after sex. You know what I'm saying? Because it reminds them of being molested. You know what I'm saying? They can't. There's all that, and that stuff can be dealt with, right? But that's not your orientation. That is some of the perversion, you having the wrong view of sexuality or whatever the case is. So this is a really good conversation.
And so sometimes those gays, unfortunately, because Christians also have a narrow view of sexuality, those gays who have been molested, who do experience genuine deliverance, they get held up as the standard for natural born LGBT people who are not going to be able to pray the gay away. And so there's a mistaken identity that because this particular homosexual was delivered, that we all can be. And that's why there are still homosexual men who have been in the church since 8 years old, who are now 75 years old, who have been praying the gay away their whole life and will die a same-sex attracted man or a same-sex attracted woman. So you can't literally use one LGBT person as the standard for all, because a lot of what happens and who we are spiritually, what our spiritual identity is, what our spiritual mutations are as a result of violations and abuse and trauma and all of these things is literally individual to each individual story. So you have to have a context for understanding what to give people as a spiritual remedy. People's stories are significant. What you've been through is significant. So, what
happened?
Oh,
I'm sharing the screen. My bad.
I see a screen sharing.
I didn't mean to share the screen. I meant to just share my audio. I mean, I'm with you, man. And this is good because you're talking about there's a difference here, and we haven't been taught this difference. When people are delivered, they're delivered from not their sexual orientation, but they're delivered from the perversion or the sexual trauma that was imparted to them as a child. Like I want to play this clip right quick. Let's see. I always struggle to find this screen sharing. You can't see it, but you'll be able to hear it. So I want to share this right quick. This guy here. You know his name. What's his name?
Go around and tell those people.
Andrew Caldwell.
Tell them. I'm not gay no more. I am delivered. I don't like men no more. I said I like women. Women. I said women. I'm not gay. I would not date a man. I would not carry a purse. I would not put on makeup.
Okay, we know this guy, to this day, he still does all three of those things, right? He wears makeup, he carries a purse, and he dates men, right?
And guess what? He's also out here dating y'all's daughters because of that false pretense.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to say to the down low thing. The church is single-handedly responsible for the down low community. When you're not going to create a space for people, if you're not going to create a space for people to be able to actually self-actualize for themselves, and your understanding isn't going to offer a lot of space for people to do that, and you're going to enforce this idea that people should be condemned and that homosexuality is wrong, you're going to get people who can't do anything about who they are, but they're willing to appease you. So they're willing to conform, they're willing to fit in, and they're willing to do whatever they have to do in order to have the respect of their families, of their societies, and of their church.
Yeah.
And this is why, unfortunately, we see so many men and women engage in marriage and relationships, and then to come to find out they're having extramarital affairs on their partner, which is already a huge issue and blow by itself. And then you add the fact that there's same-sex practices going on in the context of your relationship and marriage. So the church is honestly going to have to come to a fork in the road and find they're going to have to make some choices. They're going to have to deliberate about some things, because this is a response to the judgment of the church and of religion. The down low community is the end product of that.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy, man. We look at the down low. I mean, just some of the big names we've seen, you know what I'm saying? We just mentioned Eddie Long. You know, he was getting with young guys, smoking crack and meth and getting with these young boys. Ted Haggard in the white community doing the same thing. There was meth involved in getting with young boys and prostitutes and gay prostitutes and stuff. And it's something that it's not accepted in their religion, so they have to go undercover. I've even heard about like pastors preaching sermons that God wants to take the gay away. God wants to take the flick out of your wrist and the twist out of your hip, and God's going to deliver you. And if you struggle with homosexual thoughts, I need you to come up to the pulpit. And all of these young people come up who've thought about being gay or maybe struggling with being gay, and they're like you. They're like, you know what? I'm not accepted the way I am. God, please take this away. The pastor will want to do follow-ups with you. Let me get your phone number. This is about discipleship, really walking this thing out. And this was the pastor and his ploy to be a predator, to get their numbers, to solicit them for sex. There was a guy, actually one of the dudes who discipled me. There was this thing where, like, he was like an older brother figure, right? And he was quite older, and we would go swimming at the creek and we'd wrestle, me and my cousins, and he was there. And I remember they took off my swim trunks in the water. So I'm naked, booty naked in the water, and they'd take him and he would throw them on the beach. You know, and I'm like, hey man, give me my junk. You know, we're laughing. It's funny. Nobody, and I have to run and go get it and put my shorts back on or whatever. Little did I know, come to find out, this guy was like, he'd have a bunch of young guys over at his house, and he's there taking showers, and he's peeking through the window, trying to look at them. And I thought it was funny, him throwing my shorts or whatever. But then a couple years later, I hear another experience. Some other kid, they're at the pool with this guy. He does it to another. They're like, man, he took my shorts and threw them. I'm like, damn, he did that to me too. Like this, he's really trying to see something. It's like, and he's in the church, you know, and gay, and telling people he's delivered and not, you know, doing that, but he's still acting on it, having sex with young kids in the youth group, man. Claiming to be a father figure, claiming to disciple people, and you don't even know it. You're talking about you. One thing
that
you
actually
said,
happened to me on a few different occasions in that 20 to 30 year period. Honestly, like if I was a different type of a human being, I would probably have to go into protective custody if I ever wrote a tell-all book about who y'all pastors really are, because a lot of them I can show you based upon what's in my own text thread, what's in my DM on Instagram, what's in my DMs on Facebook. So it's a really caused me to stop going to churches, because it wasn't really even because of I mean, it's because of a lot of things that go on in the church, but honestly, just looking at trapped people is painful. Trapped people. Mm-hmm. You have people who are in powerful positions, are married, have children, who are engaging in their sexuality in some inconspicuous, shadowy way, and these people don't feel they're even a part of a community, or don't even have resources available to them to even live in their truth, to address their truth. But yet they're struggling with these impulses, and there's no space for that in religion. There's no space for the nuance of sexuality. Matter of fact, there's really no space for your humanity in religion. Yeah. Religion wants you to essentially be perfect in all ways that are holy, because we see that term constantly thrown up again. And the reality is that human beings are sexual. Human beings are emotional. Human beings are uniquely made. And guess what? You didn't ask to be horny. God gave you the potential and the capacity to be horny. You didn't ask to go through puberty. That is something that God saw fit for you to experience. And so it's interesting to move into religion where you're having things that God created be condemned. Like, even talking about sex in general in the context of religion is very taboo. We can't even have open and honest dialogue about sensuality and how to relate to your sexuality as a man or as a woman. And I don't really know why religion is scared, shooketh, and just absolutely resistant to actually confronting the humanity of human beings, as if all of us sitting in the church came by way of immaculate conception. Everybody's parents here were doing the nasty. This mega ministry is the result of everybody's pastors, everybody's parents and grandparents doing the nasty. So religion is still in a very adolescent state in terms of its maturity, in terms of its worldview, and in terms of its understanding and the way that it engages the world. It engages the world like a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah. You one thing that you spoke about at the beginning, it's something you said that as you begin to kind of develop in your own spiritual walk and finding out who you were, there was something that you did, and this is something that I believe many people in the church realm throw out the window. But you said you began to think critically, and so a lot of Christendom, because we're caught up on emotions and things like that, they throw critical thinking out the window. And you was able to start doing that. I remember it being said, and I know this is foolish for that we're kind of because a lot of people are even blurring the lines, and maybe I have in the past too. But they're looking at the homosexual in the same lines as the not pedophile, but the molesters and stuff like that, right? But there's a difference that people got to understand that, man. You know what I'm saying? This is something that the church has to deal with, just like the church had to deal with women becoming pastors, and it's happening. The church is dealing with it, right? We're kind of progressing forward. You have many homosexual preachers and pastors and churches who are inclusive and things like that, who are opening up. So that's something really interesting. But as far as like the down low and the secretive stuff, it forces these people to do this. It forces people to go into the darkness because they can't tell their wives that they're attracted to the same sex or whatever. But I remember one of the dude who led me to the Lord. They were in a part of Assemblies of God Church, very spiritual, dancing, waving flags and banners and healing and prophesying and all that. And a man came to the church and who knew some people, and he's like, "You guys are spiritual, right? You guys are flowing in the gifts of God, and the Holy Spirit is moving in power." He's like, "Yeah, we are, brother. God's doing mighty works." But they're letting their kids run around the church. And he said, "You guys are discerning all this and healing, but you guys can't discern that your child is sitting in a known pedophile's lap. This man was just got out of jail or whatever for being a pedophile. You're so spiritual, but you're letting your kids run around while you guys are at the altar, and they're sitting in the lap of the pedophile." And it's like, wow. Critical thinking, wow. So spiritual that you're no earthly good, you know. And all that stuff happening on the download, man, it's something else, and it's definitely going down, man. There's a lot of weird stuff happening in the churches, you know.
Yeah. I mean, and it's Christianity in particular, because we know that in certain African traditional practices that there were spaces created for the intersex, for the androgynous, for the lesbian, for the transgender. We know that the Native American had spaces. They had a whole third gender that was reserved for people who didn't identify exclusively with masculine nor feminine. And so we just have not developed that culture and that space within Christianity, even within Islam. And it's interesting now to see sexuality is kind of like just bleeding through, like all of the devils and all of the demons and all of the ghouls and goblins that the church have not been interested in actually having to confront are now sitting at their table. Most of the time, those ghouls and those goblins are actually the religious leaders of the church themselves, preaching to you about the ghouls and the goblins, while themselves have adverse spiritual practices. There's a good friend of mine named Cosmic Nuwaje, here in South Carolina. He's an occultist, and I can't tell you how many of the Orthodox pastors and prophets see him in the background of their own ministries. They teach against witchcraft, voodoo, and the occult, and yet go and get trained by the occultists to see into the spirit world. Go to the occultists to get healing for their ministers. Like, the church is not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like. And the church is not, and see, this is why I can appreciate people like Larry Reed, who is able to open the conversation about the reality of the saints and the reality of organized religion, because it's a falsehood, and it's been a falsehood, and Jesus passionately preached against this falsehood. And I don't understand how people can even be so passionate about supporting dogma when that dogma is what led your Lord to the cross. That dogma hung your Lord and Savior, and hung him without conviction. And you are sitting here supporting the legalism of God, supporting the spiritualistness of God, and your own God came under persecution of people with this religious attitude, with this narrowness. People have a form of godliness, but deny them the power thereof. And it's just a very strange contradiction, Derek, that is happening in religion. I'm genuinely confused about how religion is even still standing as contradictory and messy. And when I say religion, I literally want to make the distinction between spirituality and the church.
Well,
the
even
church
even Christ
today,
in the church, right? That's a difference.
That's not the church. Yes, the church we have today in contemporary times is not the church Jesus had in mind.
Exactly.
See, I believe that Jesus had a mystical church in mind. There was a reason why when he got around to Peter and asked him, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter said that you are the Messiah, that you are ABCD. And Christ said, no one could have uttered that to you, not a book, not hieroglyphics on a pyramid. That information, that data, that revelation could have not come by way of no other than a direct encounter and communication to the Father. And then he said, on this rock, I will build my church. Well, what is that rock? The rock of divine revelation. The rock of personal relationship to God, of intimate relationship to God, a understanding of God that transcends literature. It transcends ink on pages. It transcends laws and regulations and all these things that Christ said have no spirit in them. Have no spirit. For the letter of the law killeth. It killeth. And so the church is not what we see today. It's not what we have today. This is not, and this is why the church looks a hot mess and is a hot mess.
You're very passionate about this for damn good reason. You're helping a lot of people. I know your heart burns for the younger you, right? You're trying to be that person and give that guidance to the misguided you at 13, 16, 17. You have to be that person that you needed, right? And you're filling that gap, and it's working, right? I know you deal with people who are confused about their sexuality, all of that stuff. They need to know that they're not alone. They need to know that God has not forsaken them, all of this kind of stuff, and you're doing that. The conversation that we're having, you're definitely passionate about, but I can tell that you're spiritually evolved. You're okay in your skin, finally. Because we can have this conversation. There's many people who I'm a bigot just trying to have this conversation and being honest about what I've been told and what I've been taught. And I'm trying to work through my stuff too. So I can look at this and I can teach it the right way. You know what I'm saying? And that my friend, that I could be a beacon of light and hope to the people in Alabama or wherever they are who say don't let gay people around your children and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's legit. And the fact that we're having this conversation and you're okay with it is awesome, because I can't tell you how many times I've tried to talk to people about this who they get in their feelings, right? They haven't done the inner healing, the inner work. They don't know who they are, so they can't have the conversation. That's why I wanted to have you on, so you can talk about it in past tense and in present tense, where you are now with it and where you sit. There's many people who would have already got off of here. Even just the way I'm formulating sentences probably isn't even right. It may trigger you and things I'm sorry. I don't mean to do that. I'm just trying to be open and bridge the gap, which I think that we've been doing. Have I said anything out of line
No.
or that would trigger other people? Or what do you think?
Yeah. You probably have, but honestly, other people, yes.
Yeah.
But those people are not used to actually having a conversation. They're not actually accustomed to engaging in thought. And you don't have to agree with people because you're in conversation with them.
Exactly.
But I think that at the end of the day, like, this is probably the only way to at least respect amongst brothers and sisters, is at least understanding and open communication. And you are doing a super ballsy thing by even having a conversation, because most heterosexual people utilize their privilege, and they weaponize their privilege as a way to control the narrative.
Uh-oh. You froze up. He said if he gets a phone call, he might freeze up. He's using a hotspot. Maybe he'll be back. But yeah,
actually be curious about
Devil, I rebuke you for messing up the internet. I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Okay, I hear you now.
Okay, yeah. Somebody called.
Somebody called. Yeah, the devil is a lie.
Right. Get behind thee, Satan. But nah, like, so many heterosexual people, like, I always commend them when they actually want to have the conversation, because this is what this community needs. I believe all marginalized, oppressed communities need that. Like, if you are a white person who is engaging with African people in this country, it is best for you to take the position of listener rather than speaker, because you aren't going to understand what the hell a people need. You aren't going to understand the reality in which people are living, and you're going to have no idea what to do with your willingness and desire to be compassionate if you don't even understand the content itself. You don't even understand the subject itself. So when you're talking to women, like, as a man, when I'm listening to women talk about the way they feel in a patriarchal society, I have to listen to women, because I'm the person in the privileged position, because I'm a male, which means that I'm afforded and rewarded by my society simply because I am a male, in contrast to you being a woman. And if I am interested in making the world better also for women and not just men, I have to listen to women. I have to take what they want, what they feel, and what they think seriously. And I have to be acutely aware to make sure that I'm not modeling the things that make them feel like they're not at the table, that they're not considered, that they're not loved and appreciated, and that they're not being respected the same way with anybody else. So I appreciate you just simply having this conversation, because it shows humility. And if anything, this is an absolute expression of understanding and compassion on your end, because compassionate people ask questions. They have conversations.
I really want to know, honestly. Like, this is I don't have no agenda or hidden motive. My agenda is really to get to the bottom of it and then to help people who are going through it, right? You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, this is who it's for. It's for the younger me. It's for the younger you who are listening right now. When I thank you for having this conversation, man. Let me ask you this, because you mentioned that you were never like really flamboyantly gay.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Now, mind you, that's subjective. Some people look at the hair and be like, "This is a flaming queen right here." But in terms of my standard of effeminate, I wouldn't per se lump myself into that. But yes.
Yeah. So, you know, I talk about personas a lot and taking on these personas, and I feel like a lot of gay men who get into the effeminate thing, it's like they try to play the role of a woman, but it's not the role of a woman. It's it's women don't go around, "Hey girl, how are y'all? Girl, shoot." Like, women don't do that for real, but like our expression of like Valley Girls or whatever, and a lot of gay men will take that and like change the way they sound, change the way they talk with a higher octave. You've noticed that, and you make it a point to not do that, because if that was the case, like, we can hear them talking about, hold on, that's not how you talk. Like, you're not.
Well, I don't make it a point to not do it. It's just not my personal personality. I make it a point to simply be my natural self, whatever that is. I just happen to not be that.
That's something learned. Is that something learned or even practiced even, or is that natural?
So here's the thing about like feminine and masculine. All of it ultimately is, these are social constructs. Like, the way that we conceptualize femininity and masculinity is due to the way that the culture creates the lines of demarcation between men and women. So if you exist within a nation or within a community that has polarity, there's men and there's women, and there's this understanding that men and women are distinctively different, then there's going to be colors preserved for women. There are going to be toys preserved for women. There are going to be clothes preserved for women. There are going to be styles preserved for women. There are going to be roles and relationships and sexually preserved for women, and vice versa. But these things are not actually real. Like, the color pink is not actually feminine. It's actually just the color pink.
Pink is a girl color.
Barbie.
Joking. I said pink is a girl color. Not just joking.
Right. It's a girl color. Like, it's actually just the color pink. It's the same thing with like long hair. Some people will consider long hair on a man to be effeminate. But guess what?
In the Bible,
nature allows men to grow their hair naturally just as long and full as women. This is something that is just innate, and we project our own understandings and feelings and ideas on the things we live as human beings. And sometimes we make the mistake of trying to argue the subjective as objective. Most of your perception of the world around you is completely subjective. It's fragile as hell. And this is why the world is as diverse as it is. This is why Jewish people have their customs. As an American, you have your customs. This is why the cuisine in different countries is different, because what's good, what's bad, what's normal, what's familiar is different from community to community to community, depending upon that community's ideas. So masculinity and femininity is not even a real thing. It's really not a real thing. It's something that you can adopt. It's something that you can be performative in, but it doesn't have a real reality to it.
Do you think that persona, like I'm talking about, does that maybe even, I know this isn't like all cases, but maybe some of that comes from a person who is raised around women, or their core group of friends is women, and they're another one, like a guy who is just another one of the girls who hangs with them, so they pick up on those traits and stuff. And I say that because, you know, I do hip-hop music, and when I talk to my hip-hop friends, maybe a little bit more lingo comes out, and I talk, you know, I use certain terms and phrases and expressions and stuff. And I have a friend of mine we interviewed yesterday. He would overdo it, and he was like coming from the outside looking in, and he was like, he was a young sheltered white guy and getting into hip hop, and he was like, "Oh, hey girl, for real?" he was doing that. I was like, hold on, that's not how rappers talk. Like in his mind, it was rappers for real. You know, I said, you sound like Medea, really. You know, so is that like a persona just because maybe a lot of gay men hang around a lot of girls, and it's just a natural thing they pick up on? You do kind of pick up on the slang and the movements and things that your friends, embody. Is that part of it too?
I mean, it can be all of it. I mean, it definitely can be environment. If you've been raised in a family around a lot of women, a lot of emotional women at that, a lot of charismatic women, you can pick up as a male who has a lot of feminine energy. That charisma of women, so you can begin to model and mimic that outwardly as your own expression of femininity. I know even for myself as a man who is, because my auntie made a comment to me a few years ago when we were talking about my sexuality, and she said, I always figured you were gay because of your hair, and I told her, I said, the ironic thing is I would still wear my hair long even if I was a heterosexual male. I'm in an interview with a heterosexual male who has long hair, because you, Derek, Gross Girth, are a prime example that lengthy hair has nothing to do with orientation.
Is that your real hair? Is that your real hair? You
never ask a gay man whether it's his real hair.
You're speaking to it like about. I'm kind of impressed here. I'm like, hold on, you got good hair.
I'm Samson. The secret is all in the hair.
The extensions.
I was telling her, like, this has nothing to do with sexuality per se, but as a man who, because we all have masculine and feminine, like every man and every woman has a left brain hemisphere and a right brain hemisphere. The left hemisphere of your brain is associated with the masculine. This is where math, sciences, logic, and reason are contained within the left hemisphere. The right hemisphere of your brain is considered the feminine hemisphere of your brain. This is where your intuition, your artisticness, this is where the subjectivity is. This is where a lot of transcendental and spiritual phenomena is also stimulated in the right hemisphere of the brain. So because we all literally have, like, every Eve has an Adam in her, and every Adam has an Eve within him. Ironically, the scriptures even say that God withdrew the feminine from out of Adam. He did not build her from the ground up like he did Adam. He made Eve separate, or othered her from Adam. And then we even have the symbolicness of feminine consciousness and masculine consciousness, even represented within the religious narrative of marriage, where you have a man and a woman come together and they do what? They become
one.
They become one in spirit. Because to be aligned properly with your masculinity and to be aligned properly with your femininity is to be made whole. That you are incomplete as a man if you are out of touch with your emotions, with your feelings, with your intuition. Now, as a heterosexual male, that need is going to be fulfilled by you engaging in relationships to women romantically and sexually. A woman is out of touch and out of balance when she's not in touch with her logic and her reasoning. She allows herself to exist too emotionally in the world. Lots of her choices are emotionally driven. There's a overstimulation of feeling. She needs the masculine balance. If you're a heterosexual woman, that need is going to be fulfilled through your relationship to men sexually and romantically. If you happen to be same-sex attracted as a man or a woman, the way you engage your femininity and masculinity is going to be whatever is represented in the culture. So if you are a gay male who has a lot of a feminine energy, you're going to look at women and you're going to either adopt the lingo, the fashion, whatever of women, just to identify that you are someone who's in touch. For me, my hair as a man represents the fact that I am in touch with my femininity. Now, that doesn't go as far as me putting on dresses and heels and lipsticks and all of that. Yeah. But this is just something to identify me as something other than the polarity of masculinity. So lots of gay people just have their own individual way of being in touch. And that shows up maybe through the flick of the wrist or the switching or the flamboyancy or the fashion. I mean, it bleeds out. Even gay women sometimes will shave their heads, not because they want to be a man. That's just their way of saying, I am in touch and acknowledge the masculinity within myself. And they want to physically have that represented, not just internally. So it's really individual. So yes, environment and culture has a lot to do with how gay people are modeling different things, are modeling their femininity and their masculinity, but those things have nothing to do with sexual orientation, which is why you have straight men who can cross-dress and still identify as straight men. Yeah. Just because I'm a heterosexual man who likes to be in my wife's clothing doesn't mean I want to have sex with a man. I'm sexually attracted to men, but for them, the clothes, the aesthetic, just represents their expression of that, because in the Western world, we don't have a lot of space for the middle. So people are just making the best with the little they have. And unfortunately, all that exists in the Western world are these extremes. There's man, there's woman. So if you have feminine energy as a man, all you have to look for in terms of how that looks external to you is in the lives of women. Whatever women are doing is what you're going to pick up on and make use of. So sometimes it happens in extremes. Sometimes it just happens subtly. A man just might want to paint his nails black. That's it. And that for him represents him being in touch with something other than the polarity, that there's something other that he's acknowledging, whatever that other is.
Now,
did that make sense?
What'd you say?
Did that make any damn sense?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Right on. It's a little bit of both, which I knew asking the question. I just wanted to get your opinion and your take on it. As far as your community, man, you got 13,000 subscribers on YouTube. You got a big following on Facebook. Are they the younger you? Are they people who've been through similar situations? Is there a lot of gay people who are part of your community who identify with your story and how you've accepted who you are? I mean, I definitely can say there's a lot of people like that in my community who resonate with my story, who are coming out of the church. Do you find that the same thing in your audience?
Yeah, you know what? I have probably 10% of my audience is actually gay. The majority of my audience is actually heterosexual. So for the same-sex attracted people and the trans individuals who are subscribed to me, yeah, I mean, you know, they definitely admire me, but I am not somebody that is here to say, look, be like me. All I'm here to say is have a critical understanding of yourself and of the world you live in. Just be critical in your thinking. Take responsibility for your own mind. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to evaluate yourself, to ask yourself, where does this come from? Where does that come from? Don't be afraid to question the doctrines given to you in life, whether they're societal norms and ways of living, or whether those are religious and spiritual ideas. But just be somebody who is interested in getting to the bottom line of your bottom line. And whatever is down there is for you. It ain't got nothing to do with me, because what your bottom line gonna look like for you, it ain't gonna look like that for me. But I'm just here to say the way to resolve yourself is through being consciously aware, self-aware, and being introspective and being a critical thinker. And I'm okay with what that looks like for each individual. I'm not here to say men should be this and women should be that, or gays should be like this, or they should not be like that. That literally means nothing to me. What I want is people to be complete. What I want is for people to have a relationship to themselves that is a perpetuation of love and acceptance, whatever that is, and to challenge all of the things that bring you to depression and anxiety and poor mental health, and whatever it is you need as a human being, and whatever your whole self looks like. If your whole self looks like some mix between a man and a gorilla, I support that. I am just here to support and usher you into self-acceptance and to get past the ego and the egoic attachment to being validated by the outward world, to be validated by your family. Because interestingly enough, Christ also said, I have not come to make peace. I've come to draw a sword. And what that is him establishing each person in their individuality within their wholeness. And you can be one and be different.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about your sexuality in good length and for good reason. That's definitely what I wanted to focus on. But that doesn't define you. That's just the beginning. It's your story. You're talking about being able to cope with the ego, with the world, with condemnation, all of this stuff you have to deal with. And so what are some of the things that you do? I know you just briefly mentioned astral travel, leaving your body, and things like that. What are some of the other spiritual practices that you do to put you in a higher state of consciousness, maybe to connect with Christ, with God, or with other masters? What do you do? What's part of your regimen?
Reading. Reading about a lot of the people who have already so-called figured this out. So studying the greats, looking at what they've modeled. Meditation is a huge part of my practice. Being surrounded by people who also support you, in the true you, not the false you, but actually the you. The people who are not invested or don't have some predetermined fantasy of you, people who are actually okay with you being whatever that is, and only being interested in whether you're harming yourself in ways that are obvious, drugs and domestic or toxic relationships to people. So just and art, music, writing, being in nature, being creative. Creativity is something that is really essential in terms of grounding yourself and giving yourself some otherworldly outlet in this world, because maybe you don't know how to astral project or remote view, or don't know how to activate the Kundalini energy to have some mystical experience. But art is a way for you to experience your subjective self and to fulfill subjective needs, because we need practices within our lives that remind us that I'm not only human, that I'm not just my body, that I'm not just my ethnicity, that I'm not just my gender, that I'm not just my blood type, that I'm not just whatever. And art is a way to express this other aspect of self. So just being creative, man. That's why my channel looks a hot mess. That's why there's photos, there's visuals, there's poetry, there's music videos. There's all type of ways in which I'm just existing within my life, and just having fun. So I think in terms of connecting to Christ, just love yourself, and love yourself radically. Love yourself with the same sense of radical love that Christ died for on that cross, because that took a radical sense of love for you. And if you mean that much to somebody, the least you can do is mean just as much to your damn self. If Christ did that for you, the least you can do is accept it and let yourself be and love yourself accordingly. Because whatever Christ did, he thought you was worth dying for, me was worth dying for. And my goal in life is to figure out how I can love myself enough to be okay with dying and living and existing in my truth as well. That's valuable. So self-acceptance, not being afraid, and just understanding that fear is a freaking illusion, man. Don't be afraid to let people down in your life. These people don't even know who they are, yet alone have the capacity to put you on the right track in your own life. Don't be afraid to not be accepted by the people you think you should be accepted by. Learn to love what already loves you, instead of trying to appeal to systems that have no space for you as you are.
That's deep.
Oh, and one more thing. Every now and again, sprinkle some difficult ass people in your life, because you need a bit of contrast in order to stay on the evolutionary path. You don't want to be too complacent, but your foundation as a person, you definitely want to be rooted in self-love. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's huge, man. And they come. I think God has a great sense of humor, sprinkling them for you. And these people come in who trigger you and remind you of the person you used to be and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, being authentic is really sexy right now. It could be, that's not, because especially for me, coming out of the church realm, because you're a bunch of fake people, a bunch of hypocrites. And the term hypocrite is someone who you know what I'm saying, wears a mask and plays many roles, and you can't be yourself. You have to adapt to that situation and be that person. When you're with the Christians, you're a Christian. When you're with the smokers, you're a smoker. You know what I'm saying? You have these different roles that you play, and you're not comfortable in your own skin. But being authentic, there was people in my life, or just there were podcasts that I would listen to, and friends who I was like, these people are who they are, and they don't care.
Can we take like literally a 60-second? I have to pee like a racehorse right
now.
Go
ahead. You go pee. I'll keep talking.
Hold that thought. I'll be right back.
For sure. Well, there's people, and I have to talk about these people, man. I talk about them all the time. I like to say this guy's name as much as I can, but Illuminati Congo was a good friend, and just to see how he's comfortable in his own skin, he's comfortable with, you know what I'm saying, being who he is, and it's sexy. Joe Rogan's another one, was someone you would look at who is unapologetic, and in religion, you're told to play roles. You have to be somebody else. There's a lot of ifs. We talk about the unconditional love of God, the unconditional love of Christ. That's not in the church. The church, what I've experienced is God loves you if, or we love you if. We love you if you're this. We love you if you don't curse. We love you if you don't drink. We love you if you do not bring a reproach upon our congregation or whatever. I mean, that's in so many churches or whatever. And but to be authentic, man, and not to act like you don't like something, not to act like you don't listen to a certain type of secular music or whatever the case is, but being authentic and being the person who God created you to be. Like, when you find out, then that's a long, hard road to figure out who and what that is. And and it could take a lifetime. For me, it's taken 35 years really at this point to figure out who I am and be okay in my skin and comfortable. And I'm still growing in levels of that. You know, people come up and say, "Hey, I don't like the fact that you do that." Like, it triggers me. Like, why don't you like it? You know what I'm saying? You want to know. There's this weird thing. We want to please people, or feel like we need to be accepted by certain types of people. But even it's like, you know what? Damn, if you don't like it, keep moving. You don't have to be here. You know what I'm saying? And so, but to be okay with even saying that instead of trying to please those people, but being okay in your own skin is huge, man. I want to talk about something too. Take it another place. I love to talk to people about this. I'm going to just mention a couple of these. Angels, aliens, UFOs, ghosts, the paranormal. Has that realm ever crossed into this realm? I mentioned, somebody quoted me on it, but I mentioned a mist at the foot of the bed teaching you, relaying messages to you in the form of a spirit. Have you ever had any of those encounters where the spirit world crossed into this reality and you've seen things manifest? Maybe UFOs in the night sky, maybe a ghost of your ancestors or anything like that. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, I actually have. I've had a lot of extreme spiritual experiences in my life. As it relates to angels, there's a particular event that, because all of these things ultimately led me to like the development of my spirituality. But to make a long story short, my senior year in high school, I had went to go see about a vehicle I was considering purchasing in another county that was like 45 minutes away. And about 30 minutes into my commute, because I was driving my cousin's car at the time to go check this car out. And this thing manifested in my back seat. And it told me that I was about to experience a car accident and that I would be okay and that God loved me. And when I went to look back in my back seat, because I was looking at this thing through my rear view mirror, the right front tire to the car completely exploded, which then made me veer off the road, and the whole front windshield of the car completely exploded in my face. And I walked away without a single freaking scratch. Not even as much as a thud occurred in that. That was the first time that something in my life had actually like come literally through the veil. And whatever this thing was, it was prophetic in nature. It knew what would happen. It came to tell me not to be afraid. It also told me that I would be unscathed and unharmed and that I was loved. And this thing did not identify itself as an angel. It didn't identify itself as a spirit of the Lord, but it simply just manifested. And it was with me. And so I've had that experience. As it relates to UFOs, I've always been fascinated
must have got a phone call. He was
Maybe
fascinated.
with UFOlogy. I saw a UFO.
Go ahead, you're back.
Can you hear me? Like,
What, are you getting phone calls?
Yeah, people are so rude.
I hate it when they know you're live.
Right, like,
Do you get that when you're live and they're like messaging you, hey man, I want you to say my name on camera. I'm like, what the hell?
I'm being great. Leave me alone. But yeah, in terms of
Fascinated with UFOs.
A UFO, I saw a UFO when I was like 8 or 9. My mom had sent me down the hill to the candy lady store, and I had went
What's that? So a lot of white people don't know what that is. We had them where we live too, but tell people what that is.
I missed the candy lady. But yeah, for those of you who don't know what a candy lady is, it's someone who sells goodies out of their home: candy, sodas, popsicles, snacks. And she keeps great prices for those snacks.
Hustle.
So my mom had sent me down the hill to the candy lady store, and this was about 8 o'clock at night. It was a crystal clear sky, stars out, and I was approaching the porch because my mom was standing on the porch to make sure that I got down there safely. Came back up. I happened to look to my left, and right to my left were 2 metallic, triangular shaped spacecrafts, and they were literally perfectly leveled. And they weren't even hovering. They were just literally perfectly still, side by side. And they were just sitting there a few feet above our apartment complex. And me and my mother just literally sat there and looked at this thing for 10 minutes because we wanted to hear a noise. We were trying to see if it was actually moving. Was it perfectly still? And eventually my mom got bored and was like, boy, let's go in the house. And I was shook about that experience because I had just read in some of the UFO magazines that my dad used to bring home for me because I was such a weird ass kid, that metallic triangular shaped UFOs were very common at this point in time, that lots of people around the world were seeing triangular shaped UFOs. And I mean, it blew me to think that what I was looking at was the vehicle of something completely foreign to this world. I mean, and I don't think we had the technology at that time for that type of aesthetic to a plane. So that was my only encounter with the UFOs. And I've always been interested in that whole doctrine. So the Nephilim and angels mating with the women, and whether there's a connection between the demonic realm and alien activity, and if alien phenomenon and alien abduction is related to astral experiences, because there's a lot of parallels in terms of people moving through walls, seeing the light, and all of this good jazz. So yeah, I've always been interested in all of that stuff.
That's awesome.
And hearing voices, we heard all of that stuff growing up. In my household, you could hear your name called and nobody called your name, and everybody was being called. My mom was being called, my brother was being called. Cups and stuff fall, move, things in the night are heard running across the floor. I mean,
yeah.
My very first spiritual experience was when I was younger. I used to be able to lay in bed because it would take me forever to fall asleep. It still does now as an adult. And my mom would sleep with all the lights off in the house. And I would just lay in my bed, look up at the ceiling, and I could hear whispers. And it sounded like a multitude of whispers. And they would be talking really, really, really fast. And I would try to lean in and see if I could make out a word, a phrase. And it would just be all of this erratic whispering, which what sounded like a large group of something all speaking at once. And that happened to me from the time that we moved out of that apartment complex to the house I'm in now, which is one of my childhood homes. And the first year that we lived in this house, when I was like 13, I heard those voices. But after that, I never heard them again. So I guess fashion and boys and clothes and hanging out with friends kind of cut my little umbilical cord to the space that I was somehow susceptible to. So yeah, man, I've had an array of different encounters when it comes to the world of the paranormal.
Yeah, I just want to throw this out there. Chris Garner is in the comment section, friend of mine. He's saying that research the TR-3B, which is a type of aircraft that the military has now, which is a triangle ship, usually with red lights. He says research that. I don't know about what year they had that, whatever the case is.
Yeah,
but
I would want to know like what year they had, because I know they have that now, but I don't believe they had that then.
There's no like it's whole can of worms, but it's definitely part of the conversation now because of Trump implementing Space Force. We're gonna police the space. We're gonna police the heavens. So something's going on, and it's been going on. But
it's interesting that we have this whole flat Earth theology now, and people are saying outer space doesn't even exist.
Exactly.
That the government is lying about the outward atmosphere. And that's
what do you think about that? Do you like it? Do you entertain it?
I'm intrigued. Yeah. I'm intrigued simply because I have not personally been in outer space. I don't know what the hell. I don't know what the hell that is. I mean, I'm having to rely on so-called scientists and astronauts.
Animations, cartoons and animations and stuff.
Yeah, like then you got those weird anomalies where NASA is like, we Photoshop every single image of the Earth, and you have people who work for NASA going on record saying that. Then you have the astronauts who went to the moon, all suffering from PTSD. Some of them even got hypnotized so that they would never even recount the experience. I mean, there's just like weird shit. So I can't deny that there's something strange that is definitely going on in our world. And I know for a pure fact that our government is occultic and satanic and Luciferian as hell. And I know that they know more about the nature of consciousness and reality than we do. And so I'm sure 90% of what's true is being intentionally hidden from us, whatever that information is. So I'm always open to new ideas.
I'm with you on that, but I think that when we talk about the aliens or the angels, I think that those are the good guys. I think you're talking about the government being Luciferian and being occultic and pacts with negative energies and sacrificing portions of its people in wars and in false flag attacks and things like that. That's very satanic. That's very demonic. So as far as like the good guys, as far as the ancient texts are concerned, I believe the good guys are out there kind of watching over humanity, and that's why we're trying to fight them. Like when Christ, if that narrative is true and Christ comes back, splits that sky to come set up his kingdom on earth, well, somebody's going to be upset because they're not going to want to give up their kingdom. That's on the earth. The Donald Trumps and the you know what I'm saying, the freaking 13 bloodlines who control the planet. They're not going to want to let go. So there's going to have to be some type of war or fight over that. And so the government wants you to be a part of that. Join Space Force and fight against the angelic host. If you're talking about some bad karma that's being released, if you shoot at an angel of God and you take a ship down, like they're shooting craft down. You know what I'm saying? Like out of the sky, out of space, and it's falling to the earth.
But that's the thing that like makes me question whether it can't be that they're all good guys then, because it's like I think well, so angels have like a species type, and there's like these hierarchies. Like there's guardian angels, there's seraphim, there's like all these different species of angelic hosts. Some of them have rebelled against God. Some of them have rebelled against humanity. So there's been like a separation of church and state, if you will, between some of these extraterrestrial forces, these celestial beings in the universe. And I think that sometimes, the harder thing is discerning the good guy from the bad guy, because I think that both the fallen angels and the holy angels, I think that they perform in the same way, meaning that I think that, as the word says, Satan can masquerade around as an angel of light. So if holy angels occupy vehicles or auras, then those fallen angelic forces too also come in the form of that aura and that light. And so having actual discernment and determining what's the nature of the participant in this vehicle, because we can't say simply because it's a BMW that it's a good person in that BMW, because all people are parading around in BMW. So who is the person, and how do you actually determine, the good guys from the bad guys when they utilize the same spiritual technology to perform in the cosmos.
Yeah. Two things I would say about that, just from my research, is the fact of even Satan masquerades as an angel of light. The context of that scripture, it's talking about church folks. It's not talking about it's not talking about light beings or sin, because a lot of Christians will say, I know you've seen a light being in your room. That light being was a demon, because even Satan is transformed into a being of light. The context of that scripture is talking about false apostles among you who are bringing the message of Christ, but such are false apostles. It even says that. But I know we quote that out of context. It sounds sexy for it to be a light being who comes in the room and we fall on our knees and it's really a demon. But that's, you know what I'm saying? In the movies.
But it's still something to be said, right? There's still something to be said about the fact that angels are shapeshifters. We know that they've come in human form. They've come disguised as men.
Yeah.
Even the word says that be careful of, whom you entertain, how you treat strangers, for you may be entertaining a angel. And so know that they have these abilities and that they can transmute, they can transfigure, they can fly, they can take shape of whatever. But how far does that go? I don't know, because I don't believe, because if for human beings gifts are given without repentance, I would imagine that fallen angels still possess their giftings and their talents and their angelic power.
Yeah, but understanding heaven and what heaven is, as far as the scriptures is concerned, heaven is outer space. And these angels because they rebelled, they were kicked, they were banned from outer space, and they fell. Where did they fall to? They're down here with us. We're dealing with them. So? They're running the government. They're running the world. And the ones who that made it with women and produced the Nephilim, and those Nephilim died, their spirits couldn't ascend back to heaven because they wasn't supposed to leave in the first place. So they're in the etheric field here, tormenting mankind and feeding off of our energy and our auric field and things like that until the judgment comes. And that's when we look at unclean spirits all throughout the Bible. But as far as looking up the word heaven, in the scriptures, it says, I gazed into the heavens, and behold, as I looked up, and it's actually the same word as sky. So when we say we looked into the sky, we're gazing into the heavens, and the angels travel back and forth. My theology in that, and I've had a lot of beautiful encounters with starships and plasma ships and things like that, and seraphim and in the night sky. It just changed my life. But it's all coming from the understanding that those bad guys are not up there; they're kicked down here. And I had to unlearn that because of all the scary movies, and you're going to get abducted and watch what you ask for, and and there's a lot of other scriptures that tie in for it. That's my worldview, and that's what I've been led to study. And
so let me ask you this question: what do you make of Satan being the prince of the air? What for you is your understanding of air?
The air. That's an interesting one. The earth is the Lord, and the Lord's in the fullness thereof. People say that Satan is the power of the air, and he controls the airwaves and the radio and the telephone and the internet. I don't believe in, the word Satan means the deceiver, the adversary, right? Someone who is, Peter was definitely not Satan, but Peter played the role of a Satan. When Jesus rebuked him and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You don't have in mind the things of God, but your own desires, the things of man." So at that point, Peter became a Satan. And so there's there's definitely good and evil, and they all coexist in the ecosystem of this construct that God has created, in the song and dance that we flow, and all of them have their purpose. Evil is here for a reason. I don't think that there's a Satan that's going to fight against God in the final battle of Armageddon, and the devil thinks that one day he's going to overthrow the Father. No. He's a created, if that entity exists, it's a created being who knows its place, and it takes orders from the grand architect that constructs this thing and holds it together, and they exist for us. God, we talked about this in depth on your podcast, so again, referring people back to that, we'll close and plug that again at the end. But God allows evil spirits. The Bible says evil angels, messengers of Satan, that God allows, and even not just allows, but sends that God sends forth spirits of confusion, of evil angels to deal with mankind according to the acts that they're doing upon the earth. So Apostle Paul, he's leaving his body, traveling to the third heaven. They're having all these crazy encounters, but God's like, hey, I got a little gift for you. And really, I think that's a great word, gift. Then that gift was a messenger of Satan. What is a messenger of Satan? It's a demon. And so it was sent to buffet him and to keep him humble. Sit down, stay humble for a reason, because pride cometh before a fall. You get too pride and, hey, we're mighty men of God, we're moving. You're going to have to deal with these demons. And so many of these people, their demons were, these ministers we've seen, because they've made public scandals, smoking meth with young boys. They were sent a demon and they fell. You know what I'm saying? You have to deal with it. And so they're praying, seeking God, deliver me from this. I mean, many people think that Paul was losing his vision. Some people say this thorn in the flesh that God has sent me. And so God wouldn't deliver him. He said, look, my grace is sufficient for you. He's fasting and praying. He says, I sought the Lord on 3 occasions to take this. And God spoke to me and said, my grace is sufficient. Lean upon my grace. Lean not upon your understanding. So that was a gift. God knows what he's doing. So we deal with these come in the form of people and perseverance and stuff. And all works for our good in the end. And we have to know who we are and not be beat up and bullied by these princes of the air and these principalities and powers and demons and darkness and devils, knowing who we are. So that's my take on that.
So I have two things to say to that. Can I speak to that real quick? Yeah. First of all, I think Paul is a recovering narcissist. So I think that Paul having a thorn was a way to keep Paul humble, because Paul has a ego issue, and that is completely clear in what we read about Paul's old mindset. So I find this thorn thing to be very interesting, because I know a lot of people feel like they have an affliction somewhere in their life that just drives them mad. But it can be said that there's a divine purpose for the contrast within our life, or for the thing that's a thorn in our ass in life, that thing is actually keeping us in touch with ourselves, unbeknownst to us. Yeah. And so I don't believe that all strife is sometimes removed, because I think some strife is for the greater good of your highest self. Yep. As it relates to what you said about, because you kind of, as it relates to angels and aliens, are you basically saying that when it comes to evil, you don't believe evil in the sense of like, this thing is intentionally evil, but more so like the concept of yin and yang, where there's a purpose for what we would consider to be evil. And maybe that doesn't look like evil to God. It just looks like balance. Like for light, there has to be darkness. For up, there has to be down. There has to be contrast in order for there to be inner and under and overstanding. Yeah, totally. Okay. I can get with that, because I actually believe the same way. I think that what we call demons are misunderstood reptiles on our end, kind of like how people have a fear of snakes. Snakes aren't evil in and of themselves. Yeah, they're like mindsets. And you might not understand their function because you are afraid of them. So it's easier to demonize that which you don't understand. But I do consider that when thinking about evil. You consider it, we all consider it like Paul, when we're going through it. God, I'm asking you, Father, pray, you experienced it as a young man. God, please take this away. What am I feeling? Why am I attracted? God, please take this away. And God's like, nope, I'm not taking it away. Thank God. Yeah, he didn't. He took away the bondage. Exactly. So we have these things that we don't understand when we're going through them. Not saying that your sexual orientation was a demon, but you experienced ridicule. You experienced not knowing who you were. That was your demon. That was your darkness, the dark night of the soul, feeling like there's nobody that understands you and going through that. But God, now he's turned your mess into a message, and now you're speaking to many people, like Moses coming out to go back to free your people, let people know, look, you're loved, man, and all this stuff that you're going through, you think it's too much, like God's got you. So when you're going through it, you're asking to be delivered. Take me out of this trial. Take me out. I speak to the trial. I rebuke you, trial. I rebuke you, devil. Get behind me. But God's like, nope,
I sent this for a reason. So when we're going through it, we want to be taken out of it. When I was going through witchcraft and all that crazy demonic possession and hearing those whispers as well, I wanted to be out of it. But now I'm thankful. My relationship with those demons have changed. My view of the ecosystem of heaven and the way that God blessed me to go through that. God did not curse me to deal with that. It was a blessing that I made it out and I didn't die in that, but now I have a story to tell, and so many people are being set free and changed because that I'm okay with my story. So my relationship with those demons is different now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And yours too,
absolutely.
Right? Rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to throw this out there and just honor you as well. You're 33 years old. You've never had a drop of alcohol or any drugs in your life, right?
No, that's why I'm so beautiful. I mean,
Right.
great.
For sure.
Yeah, no, I've just never, I guess because my stepfather, who was the male figure in my life, he was a drug abuser. He was an alcoholic. He was a cokehead, a crackhead. And so, yeah, just being around people who abuse that, I didn't even develop just a social interest in smoking or drinking, even though I know that those things aren't inherently bad. At least drinking and cannabis is not inherently bad. But yeah, I just never developed an interest in it. It just never. And I'm also afraid, like, if I'm already naturally coming out of my body, if I'm already naturally hearing voices, what the heck? Cannabis? Can you imagine me taking cannabis? Like, I'm not even ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that door to come swinging open. God knows what will come flying through. So I'm already high enough naturally and soberly. I'm a fool. So yeah. But I did take ayahuasca recently, a month ago, right? And that was an incredible experience. So that was my first time ever ingesting any type of a substance or chemical that can create any type of a psychedelic or altered state of consciousness.
What was that like?
Crazy, because I went to hell initially. And from there was kind of a evolutionary journey up. But it was terrifying. It was wild. It was definitely a total confrontation of my super ego shadow self.
Yeah.
And it was literally terrifying. Like, it was terrifying. Like, and it was so interesting because the shaman who was overseeing my journey, he was chanting. And so I just eventually, I had been meditating at that point for like an hour and a half straight. I just got tiresome and I sat up because I was just exhausted of just laying down flat. And this candle was lit in front of me, and it looked so holographic, but then it like exploded and engulfed me and sucked me into the candle. And from there, I was actually in hell, and that's when I realized this was the ayahuasca experience, that I had officially entered into whatever space this was.
Yeah. So were you fighting it at first, and then you didn't know what it was to let it pull you? Is that kind of what happened, or?
There was a fight going on. I was trying my best to. You ever been on a roller coaster and this is a roller coaster, and there's about to be like a decline and a descent, but you're trying to, like, your body is going to be doing one thing while your mind is going to be like, I signed up for this. I know what's going to happen. I'm okay. So I was having that experience. But yeah, it was absolutely mortifying. Seeing things that I had never seen, seeing things that I didn't think were real, but being presented to me as real was really, really terrifying. There's a difference between watching a scary movie, but actually being one of the characters in that movie running from Jason. Like, that actual situation is real to the person in that situation. So
those are my dreams, my whole childhood.
Huh?
Those were all of my childhood dreams, running from Jason and Freddy and critters.
Right,
sure.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, but look at how interesting, like, it took me to grow up and to get into lucid dreaming to understand just how metaphysical Nightmare on Elm Street was. Like, this is lucid dreaming happening at its best. This is the concept of lucid dreaming. This is the concept of
manifestation, pulling something out of your dream.
Out of your dream, which is something that has occurred. People have brought things back with them historically from those experiences. But then I also met the Christ in my ayahuasca experience, and that kind of brought everything full circle. And I came back out of that experience without my ego, which was the best month of my life, because I just didn't have burden. I didn't have desire. I was just like free to be without hunger and thirst and without direction and with total peace. And over time, I could feel my ego starting to reconstruct itself after the experience, because I think the ego is something that we're always going to have with us in this body. I think this is why Paul said we must crucify the flesh daily. And as much as Christ was enlightened, he had to keep fasting and praying. He had to keep going off and meditating and realigning himself, because there is no eradication of the ego until actual death occurs. But as long as you have a physical form, you're going to be in some relationship, in some entanglement to your egoic self.
Yeah, it's we talked about this on your show about what is spiritual practice, and to me, it's walking in the spirit. As the Bible, if you walk in the spirit, you will not fulfill the lust of the flesh or the deeds of the flesh. For my flesh desires to punch you in your mouth right now. Let me walk in the spirit. Goose fraba, Lord help me. Yes. Let me meditate. Let me pray. Yes. Let me release it. And you know what? I'm good. I gave it to God. So it's a practice of that of taking the higher path and the higher route. In the comment section, Chris Garner wants you to go a little bit deeper into the Christ encounter.
Oh man. So first of all, I'm still like unpacking my experience, because I told my own audience that I would give them a full breakdown of my ayahuasca experience. It's been a whole month and I'm still trying to unpack everything that I went through. So I don't want to speak about it too prematurely, because I know that the Holy Spirit is going to absolutely help me to make total sense. And I want to be able to deliver that sermon in the best way that I can, that is like true to the intent of my journey. But what I will say about my Christ encounter is it was one of the most beautiful things to have that encounter with that consciousness. Because when I came back, because I was in New Mexico, and when I came back into this country and I reintegrated myself back into my everyday life with all the people fussing and cussing and broke and in need of money and bills need to be paid and your relatives doing this and doing that, I felt like I was having a love affair with every broken person in my life. All I could see them as people who didn't know that they were Christ themselves. I had all this compassion for this God asleep within them. Like, you're only stressed and struggling and conflicted because you're not aware of who you actually are. You're just God struggling to be free. You're just the divine and the higher self struggling to come into expression. And so I was looking at this brokenness, not even from a place of victimization, but from this place of, there's a deep urge that we all have subconsciously to be intimately connected with ourselves and with our lives. And that the society we've created is not a space that is conducive for this higher expression, that the activities, that the perspectives, that the experiences that we're having in the Western world are not necessarily conducive to that. And that's why we can look at third world countries and see so many powerful expressions of spiritual phenomenon and supernatural phenomenon, because those spaces, even though they're perceivably impoverished and chaotic, it also forces people to disassociate from their egoic attachment. They have no choice but to walk in as much faith as possible and to live within these spaces of hope and faith. And this creates powerful outcomes in people's lives. Here, as a Western person, you get to rely on your personal private doctor more than you do God. Here in the Western world, you get to rely on there being SNAP benefits on your government assistant card to go get a belly full of food, or your job and the paycheck that your supervisor is going to give to you. So there's not a lot of need to function in the level of faith and completeness that maybe other people in other spaces in this world are. But it was just amazing to come back and see, like, Christ helped me to understand that Christ is in all, and that when people are acting adversarial, that they're just struggling. They're struggling in their truth. They don't know the truth. And you are to align yourself to the Christ in you, so that you can be productive in ushering in the part of them that's crying out for help. Because all stress and trauma and anxiety and depression is a cry out for help. It's a misalignment in your consciousness. It's a misalignment in your thinking, in your ideology, in your worldview. These things are bringing about bondage and entanglement. So to just love and to realize that everybody just wants love and that everything we're doing is a chase after that. Like the pursuit of money, fame, promiscuous sex, all of that is just a chase after interconnectedness. But we're not going to know that those things don't have what we need until we have those things and realize we're still empty. So most people still have to become wealthy to realize, oh, there's no completeness in money. Most people have to have all the sex they can in the world to finally realize there's no substance in all this sex. Most people have to obtain all of that, unfortunately, before realizing that what you're really after is not external to you.
Yeah.
It's all up in here that you're trying to remedy. And you can't remedy unless you're in touch and you go within all of this and deal with it.
That's beautiful, man. Everything, all of the disease and the complications, it comes out of a dis-ease with yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's just try to get in that grace flood and to, be on the path of righteousness that God has called you to, and be in ease and grace with everything around you. Now, the Christ experience, is this the same Christ that you experienced when you felt that fire, when you felt that electricity enter in through your body? Is the same Christ, or is it?
That's how I knew it was the Christ, because it was a total deja vu moment energetically. It was that same electrifying sense of familiarity. I mean, I was totally in love with this experience that was happening to me, and it felt. I want to see. I hate talking about really
never gonna do it. You're never gonna do it.
There's not enough language. Like there's not enough accurate, descriptive language to fully articulate those type of experiences.
Didn't Paul say that though? He's like, it's not even like men can't even articulate it if they try it. It's not permissible for me to even tell you about, because I can't tell you the beauty of a cog that holds reality together and its colors and shapes that go with it. There's no way. And like when we would go into our psilocybin encounters and we would come through and we were like, it was the roller coaster, like you said it, and then we would just even almost symbolically hear it, click, 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 click. Ah! 3-4 minutes pass by, we come together. Oh my God, it's this beautiful yellow triangles with that are made out of love, and they're spinning and they're fractals, and we're like, they tell you not to try to describe it. Okay, don't describe it. We had to remind ourselves not to describe it. Just go in and be in it, And so even the Apostle Paul is talking about going to these heavenly realms, and he can't even and talking about the voices of angels and angelic languages, and that's communicated telepathically. I mean, it gets really deep, and
it is.
So any attempt that you try to do it is not
where language don't exist in that way. There's only vibration and frequency.
Yep.
So trying to use something that's limited as language to describe the limitless, trying to use linear language to describe eternity is frustrating. It's annoying, but I think maybe that's intentionally set up by the creator.
Yeah.
To say, look, I don't want you guys talking about it because it's just going to become another story in the book. If you can't articulate it, it forces people to want to experience it, which is what the creator wants.
Yeah.
Is for you to have the actual experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so me not being able to fully articulate it, hopefully prompts somebody to be like, I need to go see for myself. Let me go clear myself out. Let me go get on my spiritual path. Let me open myself to the power and phenomenon of love, and let whatever experience will come of that. But it is one that will change your life forever.
Yeah, I like the way you say that, man. And it's definitely something with psychedelics at this point. It's permeating pop culture. Mushrooms were just decriminalized in Denver. And a lot of people are leaving the country to go see a shaman, and for people talking about it, being vocal about their experience, it's catching on. Other people are like, you know what, I need to deal with my childhood trauma. Let me go and seek out a shaman. And so it's a thing that we're talking about, but that's not for everybody. I try not to promote it, but I was like, look, if it calls you, it calls you. Like, it was something that literally beckoned me, and I think God lined it up, right? But for some people, those are, you're talking about these spiritual encounters or experiences that can be done through Kundalini yoga, through deep states of trance state and prayer. Prayer and soaking is something the church gets into, of just sitting in God's presence in worship, getting by yourself and sitting in silence, as the Bible says. And there's many other realms that we can tap in through without the psychedelics, that we can create that place. And for us, even being shamans and being in this place that we've experienced before, we have a special blessing because we can take people back there, because we know how to get there. There's a place in God's heart that I want to show you that exists. Follow me. Let's go in, whether it's a meditation, whether it's a prayer, whether it's a laying on of hands and like an impartation or whatever the case is, or whatever. But there's these different realms that we've been to before that we now know how to get back to, and we can take other people with us, whether that's a psychedelic journey or whether that's just, hey, we're meeting for prayer tonight, let's go in and really go after it. There's some things that God wants to impart to you that you don't know and you cannot find out. Jeremiah 33:3. And I really believe that, man. It's so beautiful that, you know, anybody can experience this, whether you have to leave the country and it's calling you to go and do that, or if it's just in the privacy of your own home. Go to YouTube, turn on a Kundalini yoga video, light some candles, burn some incense, and go after it that way. Like, that can be done too, and to create these beautiful encounters with God, Christ, and the angels, and whatever He has for you. It's beautiful.
But see, like, it's so interesting because it's even changed my attitude toward like drug addicts. Like, there's like two types of drug addicts, right? Like, there's the drug addict that is using drugs in order to cope with the trauma that's not being reconciled through proper mental and spiritual health.
Yeah.
But then there's like there's this other community of drug users who also know that they are not their body, but there are not activities and practices like in the Western world that allow you to have experiences beyond your five senses. And so drugs oftentimes act as ways for people to enter into certain states of consciousness, because people know that they're not just this body. People know that there's something more than this. Yeah. And sometimes the alcohol and the drugs is a way to actually experience and to go into all of that.
Or
now, unfortunately,
just escape as well, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's so funny. Escape, and I think also this balance. I think it's like, I don't think people really want to leave here, but I think they want to have balance between their soul self and their human self. Like, I'm an energetic being encased in a flesh. I'm going to have desires. I'm going to have flesh-based desires, but I also have this other thing that Christ said, man cannot live off bread alone. That there is a yearning, there is a desire, there's a longing for home, there's a longing for interconnectedness. And so I think we just want to be plugged in. You know, we just want the full picture. You know, I don't want to die. I don't want to identify with death totally. I don't want to identify with living totally. I want to exist within both paradigms, because I am both living and death all in once. I am the mystery, and I am what is visible as well. So I think people just want to be in touch, you know, and
it happens. Yeah, it happens, and you have a lot of people, they refer to themselves as psychonauts, and they've spent a lot of time doing ayahuasca or mushrooms or peyote or whatever the case is, right? They're really they have a lot of info about those realms and how they operate and things like that. So, but for me, I go back to like what you said, and I think we have to be careful here. There's also a disclaimer with that, because people chase that high, they chase that other realm, they just want to escape and go to the other place, and people do that with psychedelics and even with the church. Let me get that high of the Holy Spirit. So you just run like a crack addict, you know what I'm saying? And you want that next high. With an experience like you had, an experience like I had with psychedelics, there's so much info and there's so much imparted to you, and we sound like buffoons here trying to articulate it, but it's really, it's felt, you've experienced it, and it's really not for you to articulate with the world. Obviously the lessons are, you know, you have to see the other stuff for yourself, you know, but the lessons are universal messages that you get, and it's going to take you weeks, months, if not years, to really break that stuff down. And that's an honor. It's a medicine. It's not to be abused, but to unpack that stuff. I remember when we went in and we had that encounter, and for me, I'm blown away. And most of us were. We had just like, I mean, people putting down pill addiction, getting delivered from that, and really just seeing God, man. And it was so life-changing. And I met with angelic beings called the Golden Teachers, you know, and just I had a conversation with them, and it changed my life, and it made me like reevaluate things. And a friend of mine came late, but he still took it, and he was on a different wave as us, and had a good time. He's listening to Pink Floyd and Leonard Skinner and all that stuff. He had his own little experience. After we were done, we were like almost in shock. Like, man, we just touched heaven. I don't even know how to function. How are we supposed to eat? Okay, now do we eat meat? What do we eat? You know, you like really touch the other side of heaven, man. And we're trying to piece together. You feel you're still in that realm, you know, the next day. And I'm like, man, this is going to take me a long time. I can't wait to unpack it, but I know it's going to take me some time. And that other guy, he was like, man, that was awesome. I'm going to do this next week. I'm like, you lost your mind. There's no way. I said, we must have had different encounters. Like, you didn't see the same thing I seen. There's no way. And so, but this guy went and did it the next week in a different setting. Ours was, I mean, we were in meditation, we were chanting, we were fasting before we approached it. We went in with intention and focus and made sure the music was right. This guy goes into a party with a couple guys, and they got music blaring real loud. He's in a subdivision. Their doors and windows are open, so therefore the cops might get called. You know, there's just all this weird energy with people who aren't spiritual. They just want to get messed up. And my buddy does that, and he's in the bathroom crying, freaking out all night, fighting demons off of him because he didn't respect it. And he had a bad encounter. I said, hey, we warned you, man. Like, this isn't nothing to play with, you know? And, but yeah, you have to respect the medicine, man, you know?
So that's why I say people need to really develop their emotional and mental health before getting into certain spiritual practices, because you can overdo it, because what you don't realize is that you have a addictive personality type. Yeah. And if you have an addictive personality type, you're going to abuse mushrooms, you're going to abuse marijuana, you're going to abuse, because there's functional drug users because they don't have a addictive personality type. So you really want to take time to really evolve yourself emotionally and mentally, come to a place where you feel very emotionally grounded, you feel very mentally grounded, and then proceed in the development of, whatever you feel called to, in terms of those esoteric arts and practices. So yeah, if you have an addictive personality, you're going to overkill it for sure.
I feel like it's anything that you can't do without, that you're addicted to. I don't think we should be addicted to anything, right? Especially anything outside of ourselves, whether it be coffee, whether it be smoking marijuana every day, or drinking every evening, or taking. I know people who take pills every evening when they get off of work. They take 2 or 3 Lortabs, Vicodins. They just take those muscle relaxers, and they just sink into the couch. Kids can be crying, screaming, throwing toys. It doesn't matter. I'm just taking my time. And I don't think that that's necessarily the right thing to do. You're in another world, and your life is happening outside of you. But there's people who do that. There's people who drink every day, and it's a form of escapism. And so you have to really be able to take breaks from that stuff. And especially when we talk about opiates or taking pills or even drinking, like, these people stop doing it, they're going to get sick because their body is now addicted to the substance, and I don't think we should. I think it's healthy to take a break from all of this stuff, social media, even, whatever it is that is just a part of our life, to shake it up. I mean, that's why I walk through the forest, to walk through the woods, or hiking is so powerful. You get to, disconnect, put your feet on the ground, and really decompress and release all of the stuff that it's part of your routine. It's part of your identity. You find yourself in it, even if you don't know that you do. It's just something that can't stop it. When you can't stop something, you're addicted. And that's weed, cigarettes. I mean, it's whatever. You know.
Yeah.
I don't think anything in of itself is bad. Tobacco is there's you know what I'm saying, ritualistic
Most
ways to
things
use.
are neutral.
Yeah,
Most things are just neutral at best. I mean, even getting addicted to optimism can be hindering because it can actually it can actually prohibit you from being empathetic. If you constantly just have this attitude that it's all okay, everything is okay, it's okay, it can keep you from actually being present and actually dealing with the reality of the circumstance situation before you. So literally balance is really necessary. You don't want to be radically to the left or radically to the right. You want to be in the proper space in between, and just being in that nucleus between the pendulum is going to be like the most healthiest. Like most of my issues as a human being growing up came from being way too left or being way too right. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't able to feel sane, and I wasn't able to feel healthy as a person until I actually just learned to relax, just relax and to be present and to be able to trade in my emotions at times where I needed my mental, and to be able to trade in my mental at times where I needed my emotions, but to not be too mental because there are things that I need to be emotional about, and to not be too emotional because there are things I need to be mental about. And I really want that to be understood by men per se. Like men need to give themselves permission to actually like be compassionate toward themselves and stop supporting these like toxic masculine ideas around your own emotional wellness and emotional body, because we know that suicide rate has doubled in terms of men. It's definitely quadrupled in terms of marginalized communities, and that more Black men are like killing themselves these days than they ever have been. And I believe because it's the narratives around masculine and manhood that are limiting men's particular relationship to their emotions. And you need your emotional body. You cannot walk around containing your trauma. You have to give yourself permission to cry. You have to be okay as a man crying and shedding tears. You have to be okay wearing your heart on your sleeves and letting the people in your life know that you love them. You can't think of those things as corny or weak or feminine or womanly to do. Like, we all need our minds and we need our hearts, and we have to literally get over the societal bull crap. Like, we have to get over that crap. That crap is dumb, and it literally is going to kill you. And people are actually killing themselves, overdosing with opioids and constantly high all the time because they don't know how to exist soberly in a healthy way, because they're making too many radical choices within their bodies. Like, it's ridiculous.
The crying is a big one, especially for me. I'm reminded of, in the scriptures, Jeremiah was known as the weeping prophet, and he would just cry. I cry a lot when I'm in the spirit. There's a couple of times I've cried on camera talking about things really dear and close to my heart. But I do find that release, and a lot of times I get in the presence of God and go to that secret place where only God knows me and calls me to meet with Him, and I weep. I weep for many different things. I weep because I'm happy. I weep because I'm free. I weep because I'm delivered. I weep because I'm married and have a beautiful family. Like, there's just so much for me to be thankful for, and there's just many reasons. But that release of crying, and a lot of people will see that as effeminate or see that as weak. And a lot of people who haven't experienced that, I do it a lot, and it's a beautiful practice. And it's not like I make myself do it, but I'm just natural. You don't have to hold back. We was at my daughter graduated from middle school, and they had this whole touching ceremony and played the violin music, and it was showing clips of her life, and she wrote a letter to us, and I'm just like, I want to weep, and I gotta hold it in. I'm holding it in, and I've been at church services where it's okay to weep. It's okay to cry at this church. But I've also been in straight-laced, tight-collar Baptist churches where the preacher is really, I feel like he's reading my mail. And he's a Baptist straight-laced guy. And he's reading my mail, and I just want to weep. But there's no way that this is accepted. I'll look like a freak, a weirdo, if I just start weeping here. But you've been in those atmospheres and situations where, hey, it's okay. It's okay to cry, man. Give me a hug,
Man, I get so excited to wear both of them on my sleeve, man. Like, when I am feeling it and I'm in the moment and my heart is just like wide open, I mean, I literally will cut a freaking fool. I don't care. Like, I will show my lovable behind. Like, I will tackle a person to the ground, fall to my feet, like melt into the ground in love. Like, I don't care anymore. Like, I've just released all of that. And like, I went through a divorce last year that really threw me over emotionally this year. And I had to get to a point where I realized that my emotions and me being emotionally present was actually starting to be toxic now, because it's not allowing me to actually do things that practically can realign me emotionally, because I'm so present emotionally. So I had to become militant and become very rational in my thinking in order to soothe the emotional body. So you have to just be in balance. Like, you have to know when to turn it on, when to turn it off. And if you find yourself being too emotional, it's just because you need to be mental. If you find yourself being too mental and you're not really feeling anything, you're having a dull, feelingless experience in life, you need to open your heart. If you have an overactive young man who has way too much testosterone, he needs to be around a lot of women in order to soothe that testosterone, in order to soften his testosterone up. He needs to have balance to all of that adrenaline. If you have an emotional female who is way too emotional, she needs to be around her brothers. She needs to be around other men. She needs to learn how to counteract herself so that she can have power emotionally and mentally. Like, we just need both. Like, all of us need both, because we are made up of both.
So true, man. So true, man. Thank you for coming on this podcast, having this conversation with me, man. We've explored so much. Thank you for opening up to me and the audience, and I really believe that your message and your story is definitely going to help some people who are in that same boat. What would you tell the young person who is in the church, struggling with their identity and attracted to the same sex? Do you tell them to leave, get out of there, come out of her, my people, so you will not partake of her sins? What do you tell them? Do you tell them to find a new church? You know, what would you tell that young person who's listening?
Wow, that's an interesting question.
Is every scenario different? I mean,
yeah, like, that's what makes it that I know most people have an easy answer and already have one, but the truth is that is not an easy question, because there's so many variables at play. Is your church even the right church has to be dealt with? Are the people in charge of this institution, of the spiritual learning, the proper people, and are they teaching that in the proper way? And then you have the issue of the actual person. Has there been trauma? Has there been all of that? Ultimately, if somebody's in the church, I think the best middle space is if you can find like unbiased counsel, maybe in the form of therapy. Actually integrate therapy into your life. I think therapy will help you differentiate the things in your life that are actually taken away. Are you okay? I see you.
No, I'm just saying that's a no-no for the church realm, though, to go outside of the church to get therapy. You know,
right? But at the same time, you're struggling. You're struggling because of the church. Yeah. Like, if the church was the right place, you wouldn't be conflicted. If your space was the right place, you wouldn't be stressed and depressed and suffering in this way. So it's about acknowledging. It's about leaning not unto your own understanding. If the way you've been dealing with your pain has been through particular things that just have not come to serve you, it's okay then to open your mind a little and to consider some other avenues, and considering therapy, considering taking time away from the church to discover and ask yourself who you are, what you want, and what you honestly do feel about the circumstances of your life or about your sexual orientation. And then just seek counsel. Like, the best, Iyanla Vanzant says it best. You just have to interrupt your own pathology. You have to interrupt your own pattern. When you've noticed there's a pattern and you're not being served in this pattern, it's time to go radically to the left. I think even Apostle Paul says something about, he basically says, if you want to be found, you have to be willing to get lost. That you have to be willing to reconsider another way if the way you've been going has not edified you. So I would encourage somebody in church. I know that therapy is anti-church, but therapy.
If you need help. I mean, somebody who's really speaking out about this in the black community, because maybe in the black community this is overlooked and taboo as well. But Charlemagne, which is from you know what I'm saying, from your area, is very vocal about seeing his therapist a few times a week and how much it's helped him to have somebody he can vent to. I mean, spiritually, physically, scientifically, you know, the Bible says, confess your sins, confess your faults one to another so that you may find healing. Just get it off your chest. Tell somebody what you're going through. Tell somebody about the fears, because you trying to hold it in and hide it and act like it doesn't exist. You're not going to find healing. You're not going to find. You're not going to be able to cope with who you are and who God created you to be. You have to just talk to somebody about it, and hopefully it's someone who won't get on social media and put you on blast or try to take advantage of you.
See, that's why I say therapy, because it's literally the safest space. Yeah,
you need a third party.
Safest space.
Yeah.
But I also want people to understand, you have to do something. You cannot hope you're going to get better. You have to interrupt the pain. You have to do something other than what you've been doing. So many people right now are still waiting for the ball to drop from heaven. People right now still waiting on God, when God already done provided all the lanes and avenues to improve you. But because you won't stop leaning into your own understanding, because you won't stop being perpetual in your practices, you are not being able to see the forest for the trees. You have to do something. Faith without works is dead, and works without faith is dead. It requires both. You got to do something about what you believe in. You have to do something about what you need. It's not enough to just sit there and suffer. You have to take an action. And this is the goodness of God. God is so gracious and so earnest and so loving that it doesn't even matter if whatever you consider to do isn't even the highest. It isn't even the highest form of healing. God will take the potential in that other step you took and help you expound upon it. But you just need to do something different. Just do something different. Something else. And that something else is going to look different for everybody else. For me, it was getting the hell up out of the church. I'm not going to encourage people to get the hell up out of the church. That's not for me to say.
Unless it's a toxic church, then get the hell up out of the church.
Then get the hell up out of the church. But then again, it's like, what do you really consider a toxic church? Because some people feel some sort of kind of way about church, because some churches are actually making you deal with your ego and you can't stand it. But you consider the church to be toxic. You consider that pastor to be evil. You consider that pastor ain't evil. That pastor is whipping your egoic behind the way it's supposed to be whipped. Yeah. And your pride and your dignity and your arrogance and your narcissism cannot stand up in front of it. So it's a big conversation when saying what to tell somebody. I just say, just do something different.
Yeah, everybody, speaking of the toxic church or the toxic people, everybody has... you know, their trigger, their stopping point, right? Of like, okay, I can't put up with this anymore. Whether it's tithing, you keep telling me I'm cursed if I don't give my money. Please stop. No, I'm not cursed. God loves me. He's blessed me to be a blessing. I'm not cursed if I don't give to you. Yes, you cursed. You're cursed of God. And hold on, this is toxic as hell. I got to get up out of here. That's a good reason. You know, God telling you, you know, in your situation, maybe, you know, that you're going to burn in hell. God hates fags. It's a toxic church. You know what I'm saying? God hates black people. God hates this or whatever. No, like we talked about this on your show. God doesn't hate gay people. You hate gay people. So, you know, keep that, you know, that's toxic, right? So there's just different things that's like causing you mental distress. So you got to be able to discern, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, you got to be challenged. You got to be challenged. Being challenged is good. Like to examine yourself, to make sure you're in the faith like every day, and make sure your motives your hands are clean and your heart is pure. But these are some of the taboo things that people just accept because they hear it and they got a couple scriptures attached with it. You know what I'm saying? So we have to deal with that. Yeah. Man, go ahead and plug your YouTube channel again. Again, you just released it today even. Our interview that we did together, really good stuff. But go ahead and just plug your channel, because you got a lot of really cool stuff over there, and people are wanting to know. They want to make sure that they are able to subscribe.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to actually plug it into the comment section so people can actually have the direct link to click on.
Yeah, they've been, and some people have helped you out already. They've been doing it.
Oh,
too, but you go ahead.
okay.
Yeah. Do it. Okay. Do it for the people who were listening on the podcast app who can't see what you're typing.
Okay. So my YouTube once again is Conscious TV, and that is CONSCIOUZ TV. That's where you can find me on YouTube. You can also find me on Instagram at Conscious TV as well. You can also email me at conscioustv@gmail.com. And I don't really hand out my Facebook per se, because I try to keep my Facebook more personable rather than kind of like public. I'm in the process of making like a fan page, but if for whatever reason you need to reach me on Facebook, it is Davyon Augustus on Facebook, which is DAVYON for Davyon, and Augustus AUGUSTUS on Facebook. But Conscious TV, YouTube, Conscious TV, Instagram, and email is conscioustv@gmail.com. And I just posted it also as well in the link on YouTube, in the live stream on YouTube. So you guys can go over there, see all of my content. I want to let you guys know I am not the holiest person. Some of my content is filled with profane language. And, like, I am just a crazy person. So do not have no expectation on my YouTube channel. Just go into that thing with an open mind. But if you sift through, all of the bones, you will find meat, because there literally is something there for everybody, because I'm kind of every kind of a person. My personality is kind of like all people wrapped into one. So yeah,
become all things to all men, man. You know what? We're all the same way, but people need to understand that. Again, bro, I really enjoyed this conversation. I know we can keep going for hours. My wife just texted me and was like, "Oh, you still on the podcast?" Yes, we're having a great conversation. But we'll have to do it again, because literally we can keep going. I wanted to make sure that we got into the depth of your spirituality and not just talk about your past or you being defined by your sexual orientation. That's silly, right? You're defined by what you're attracted to. There's so much more on top of that, but I'm glad we was able to tackle that, right? From many perspectives, from my perspective and from your perspective and a biblical perspective and a new look. And it's much, I believe, much needed. And much needed, if not for anybody else, for me and my friends who may be a little old-fashioned or whatever the case is. It's time to wake up and smell the roses. But, man, thank you so much, and we'll have to do it again, brother.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you for even offering your platform to me. Thank you for being someone who has questions and being willing to ask them, and not continuing to be willing to just draw conclusions when you have the luxury of asking. So I just really appreciate you. And I want people to go check out our conversation on my channel as well, because a lot of people have been giving me some amazing feedback from that conversation. So I definitely want to do this again. Hopefully this won't be the end of the road for either one of us. And just thank you to the audience. A lot of people apparently took a lot from this conversation too. I
haven't seen one negative comment, bro. So I know I haven't seen one negative. Everybody's supportive. I want to go through the
fine-tooth comb, and when I find the negative comments, I'm going to cuss you completely out. Just letting you know. But
I've done it. I'm sure you have too. Mind your business. Yeah, man, stay off of my channel.
Yeah.
For sure.
So just thank you, man, once again, and tell the wifey hello.
For sure, yeah. I wanted to give this quick story because, like, I was showing my because your I don't know about persona, but your countenance, your aesthetic is so powerful. You love fashion, really out there fashion too. Some big old glasses, like 7 inches tall. You're really intrinsic with the way that you dress and stuff, and it kind of it really precedes you. It's kind of intimidating. Like, oh God, how gay is he? Yeah, from me, from being a little Christian boy. Okay, how gay is he? Is he gonna?
Look at you, tattoo, long hair, goth, rock.
Yeah, I know, right?
Who you scared of?
You probably was scared of me.
Look, I'm trying to tell you, I'm like, dude.
That's a good thing, though. I mean, I've had a bunch of those conversations that you're kind of intimidated going into. So I have like really right-wing conservative women on my show, and I'm like, I make sure I'm covering up. I'm not talking about aliens. Like, I don't want them just to unleash on me. You know what I'm saying? But it's about finding that common ground. But anyway, I showed. Come on, you have like nude photos and stuff, like really provocative stuff on your channel.
Okay, wait, no, hold on, wait. They're not nude photos. I have images that are beautiful depictions of the human form, and all things are covered, but there is an embrace of skin because this is our natural birthday suit, and I don't feel a need to shun it. God saw it fit for Adam and Eve to be naked. Why should I shun nakedness?
You're causing people to stumble.
No, but look, there's a difference between nudity and being explicit. So as long as people understand the difference, like lots of our Renaissance art is depicting of nudity, but it's not graphic, it's not explicit, it's not presented for the sake of sexualization.
Well, I think the scripture may even talk about it, but a lot of early depictions show Jesus on the cross naked, but we've clothed him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like he had a little cloth around his loin. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, he was beaten, he was ridiculed in front of the world, man. You know what I'm saying? But we had to change that because of certain reasons. But anyway, I'm just messing with you. I'm trying to set up just the little story because I showed my wife and daughter, your pictures and stuff. I said, I'm finna interview this guy. He's really cool. I was on his show, and I just, these really cool pictures of you with your hair. Your hair changes quite frequently. You get, and so I'm just showing them like, here's his blonde hair, purple hair, blue hair, long black hair, long hair, don't care. And anyway, there's like, oh, that should be interesting. And then we're walking through the mall past a store, and there was this wig on display. And it was like, hey, that looks like your friend. That looks like one your friend would wear. I'm like, yeah, it does, don't it? Anyway, just a little story. I told him I would say.
And I'm mad. Y'all should have purchased that wig and put it in a care package and sent it to me.
I couldn't afford it if I wanted to. Couldn't afford it. The Lord has blessed you.
I love it, man.
Nah, good stuff.
Nah,
man.
You're setting an amazing. You are the father that so many of us like hoped to have had growing up. I mean, just to see someone who's just loving the world and trying to figure out how to love people, like that's just who we need to be. And I just can't imagine the way your children are going to evolve as adults, having you and your wife model the level of like compassion and interest in relationships to other people that you guys are modeling for them. I mean, to sit here with somebody that you should not, quote unquote, have been sitting here talking to and have an open and honest heart-to-heart dialogue with is incredible representation. And I just think that we just need more of that in this world.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's why I'm doing it, because we were told not to. I mean, most of my guests, from my background and even friends, I'm in the Bible Belt, and they would say, don't talk to them, don't give them a platform, don't do this, whether it's anybody different. Again, going back to not just homosexuality, but spiritual homosexuality, and only hanging out with your kind, and only associating with you and your church friends, and only associating with you and your Muslim friends, or whatever you are, you know what I'm saying? And you only deal with those people. And syncretism is beauty. You find Christ, you find God in whatever you're looking at and looking for, and God is in it all. And for you to be able to train your eye to be able to see that, if you can't see God in all, then you can't see God at all. And God was definitely a part of this conversation. And again, in the comment section, people are already just saying how much they were edified from this, and I did it for them too. So good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, see, I could talk to you all day because you always say something that makes me want to say something else.
That's why
but I just want to say this. Right.
Okay.
Like, I just want to say this one last thing. Like, what's interesting about that is, like, one of the things that I love about the Caucasian race or European people is you guys have a different way of allowing y'all's men in y'all culture that is not allowed in my particular culture. Like, a part of getting tattoos and piercings, that was inspired through the punk rock community, through the heavy metal community, through kind of like Caucasian culture that I like integrated into myself as a Black man. Even the length of my hair, watching white men being able to just exist within themselves without the nuance of necessarily judgment. And I know that it's not a total non-judgment zone. I know you get judged by different communities for having piercings or maybe for having long hair, but just speaking in very general terms, that's something that I really appreciate, because in the Black community, this can be considered really gay, even though I ain't doing none of this because I'm gay. I'm doing this.
You're right. You're right. You're right. If you was a white guy with that hair, it would be different. You're right.
It's just an art,
right.
like fashion and aesthetic is just an art form to me. So yeah, I'm just hoping to just continue to set a precedence for men, certainly, because we just got to break up out of the slumber of it all and really just wake up and become better and become full of ourselves in all of the right ways.
Yeah.
So
white ways?
Yeah. The right. R-I-G-H.
I'm not gay no more.
The right.
I am delivered.
But go. I'm going to go.
I like men no more. I said I like women.
You was able to hear that, right? That guy's a trip, bro.
Do you follow him on social media?
I have. I had to quit. I had to quit. Yeah. Oh, I had to quit following him just because he's so much of a hot mess. But yeah, I've checked up on him. Yeah.
How about you have that hot mess on the show?
I know,
that
right?
Would be an interesting conversation.
See, I would feel like you know what, and honestly, I couldn't, because I would feel like I was exploiting him. I'm 100% honest with you. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. I don't think he's secure in who he is. I really don't. I couldn't have this conversation with him.
Some people come to be the court gestures. Some people are born to entertain.
Yeah.
So that could just be another way of looking at exploiting him. But he is a hot mess.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's comfortable in himself to have these. He don't
even know who he is. That's why he acts the way he does.
That's what I'm saying. He's just mimicking. Women don't talk like that. But you know what I'm saying? That's why I was glad to have this conversation with you versus getting this guy on my show and finding healing.
So did I help dispel or rectify certain thoughts or feelings or beliefs or ideas you held about?
No, big time, especially the fact of, someone dealing with a sexual perversion and sexual trauma, and not that, being delivered from that. Maybe he was, even within this clip, I'm delivered. Obviously, he tied it in with not liking men or whatever, but maybe he was, and maybe other people are delivered from perversions, pornography addiction, weird sexual fantasies, and that's a big one. Even in the scripture addresses coming up with new ways, and a lot of that from my perspective is like embodied by a lot of the homosexual community. Just looking at the gay parades and men walking around with their junk hanging out, and and sex toys dildos strapped all over their body, and walking through the crowd, and like just really weird gay stuff. To like, okay, that's the gay. Those are gay people. That's what every gay people is like that. You know what I'm saying? So there's a difference. They have to come. They need some healing too, right? So, you know what I'm saying? So I definitely had my eyes open a good bit, and just feel good to having this conversation, and then again providing something for my audience that they're not alone. Again, those gay people who, man, they're all they've the younger version of you. They're listening, man. Really are.
Yeah. So. It's not a monolith, man. Like, women are the monolith, men are the monolith, gay people are not a monolith. Like, everybody is different. Nobody really represents another person. And it's literally just a case-by-case thing. And I think if we can stay there case-by-case, we won't create such broad strokes over people and classify them as racist because they're simply white, or dumb and invaluable because they're simply black, or they're crazy out of control sexually because they're gay. Like, if we just could, and I know it's hard because we do like to make a lot of generalizations, but just literally looking at people individually would keep us from just not succumbing to a lot of radical,
I'm not gay no more.
Defining a whole community.
I don't like men no more.
I'm done.
I'm out of here. Women.
Let that be a rest in peace.
We'll
does
do it
that
again,
sound
man.
like the Holy? Do people really believe that that's the Holy Spirit?
Yeah, heck yeah.
Does Does that sound like the Holy Spirit coming out of that boy's throat? Does that sound like the vocal cords of the Holy Ghost?
It just depends. Like if the music wasn't there, there's music in the background. So if they wasn't, if that music wasn't there, then this would be very awkward.
I like men no more.
Cymbals, come on, praise. I'm like,
I said I like women.
He's responding to the music.
I said women. I'm not gay.
So if there was no music there, this would be very awkward. But a Pentecostal.
Is that what the church wants from us?
Yeah.
We all need to cut a fool like that.
Cut a rug.
This coming Sunday. Is this what the church want from us?
A lot of times. I mean, they want that from everybody.
All right.
It encourages people. Like people give more. You know what I'm saying? Like you hear about miracles. We do, and this would be a really good interview to have with you. I've talked to 2 different people about this. We're talking about, and I shouldn't even open the can of worms until we really do this on the show. But talking about like the fake miracles in the church, and like performing miracles to get the people to give, to get them to have more faith, and we perform fake miracles and fake angelic encounters and stuff like that. But that'd be something cool to explore with you too.
Let me ask you about that. Yeah. We should talk about that on another show. But let me ask you about that. I was it's a movie. I think it's a movie called Ouija that came out a few years ago.
Okay.
And it was a woman. She was using the Ouija board in order to help people cope with deceased loved ones or people who had lost people close to them. And her daughter it was fake. She was being performative with it. There was no genuine power behind what she was doing. There was no genuine paranormal phenomenon behind what was happening. And when her little daughter asked her, she said, "Mommy, why are we lying to people about da-da-da-da?" And the mama said something very interesting. And I think people who perform fake miracles actually think this way. She said, "We're not lying to people. We are just helping people to believe what they already want to believe."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the premise of that whole
interesting
conversation.
Psychology.
Yeah, and there's a lot because most of these miracles we hear, they're just third party. You know what I'm saying? They're like, I was in Africa, and and this happened, and I raised the dead, and I know there's preachers who make a living off of their stories that there's really no proof of. They give you these great grandiose stories, and it builds your faith. And I feel like they feel like they're, them lying or sharing the stuff is they feel like they're justified because, you're given more and you believe in Christ more and his resurrection power to set you free and perform miracles. It's very interesting to look at. We looked into several different ones that were really big in the Christian community. Peter Popoff. We talked about that. He had an earpiece in his ear, and they're reading, ailments, and they're reading cards that people filled out, and he's got an earpiece, and he's calling it out. We talked about this on the last 2 episodes.
Or you even have paid actors who are paid to come into the church and act sick and handicapped to fulfill the miracle.
But then again, it just whether it's you need one fake one to spark a real one, or to build the faith to think that it's possible because God responds off of faith. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, but because people do get healed. Like there are supernatural miracles that do take place. You know what I'm saying? So
I just say stay away from the fraudulent. I mean, because the interesting thing about like breaking one of the laws is that like once if it's ever exposed, the whole infrastructure falls apart because you have to question then all of it. So even though lying seems like a proper means to an end, one little small white lie just won't. Not a huge. Oh, hold on, wait. We literally have the same tattoo. I didn't know. I didn't.
What is it?
Know that.
Can't see.
Oh man.
What is it?
I don't.
Oh yeah. You talking about the flower of life?
Yeah.
On the forearm.
That's crazy. Yeah. I just noticed that.
Yes.
Wow.
For sure.
You're like my
white.
You're like my
brother.
white higher self.
White
I'm like
brother.
your black higher self.
I'm your white brother.
Okay, but I gotta go pee, so let me go. Thank you for the show.
We'll do it again.
Am I gonna be able to upload? Am I gonna be able to upload this to my channel?
Sure. Yeah.
At some point, or
yeah, just let me get a couple clicks off of it first, and you can upload it. Upload it under a different name, a different title.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Change the title.
All right.
And upload it.
All
sure.
right.
Yeah. All right, brother. I enjoyed it, man.
Well,
we'll do it again.
All right, so let's do this again, man. I appreciate it and love you.
All right, love you, brother. Peace and shalom.
Bye-bye.
Later. Okay. Yeah. Davyon. Good brother. We've been building together for probably about a good week or so. I was on his podcast, and we've been talking, exchanged numbers, texting a good bit, and just being there for people. You never know where people are, man. And it's the fact that you don't know what it does. The Bible says that love covers a multitude of sin. And no matter what somebody's going through, it's the fact that you care. You care for that person. You're going to show long suffering, which is one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. I can tell that you know Jesus, not because of your doctrine, how good you quote the Bible. I can tell you know Jesus by your fruit. You have long suffering, peace, patience, gentleness, meekness, temperance, self-control, long suffering. You're able to suffer long with somebody. And I'm telling you, just a little bit of long suffering, just acting like you care, even if you genuinely don't. Just try to care. Make yourself care, right? I can't tell you. I've recently met a guy, Brother Gil Hodges, right? I was on his show just as a guest, and he's a pastor, and he had me on his show, and I know people were in his inbox telling him, hey, don't have TruthSeekah on. He talks about mushrooms. Don't have TruthSeekah on. He talks to New Agers. And I know he had dealt with that. He's like, you know what? I don't care. I want to talk to him. And I felt like the guy genuinely cared about my story. I felt like the guy genuinely cared about me as a person. And we connected off the air. And I can't tell you, to have an older gentleman, more of would kind of picture like a father type, act like he cared, and just show. I've been looking for this for a long time. This would have helped me so much in this dark road that I went down. I have all of my leaders, pastors, father figures. They all walk out on you like it. That's become used to that. And so even over the years, people would say, Derek, you just don't have you're running from authority figures in your life. You're running from this. No, these people have kicked me out. You know what I'm saying? And this guy, he's come in, and it's kind of weird because I haven't had that, and I've been looking for that, and someone to receive godly counsel from, somebody who believes in you and say, look, I know we don't have to agree on everything. We love Christ. We love the Lord. Let's walk together. Let's build. And just that little thing, to me, it's the world. And it's doing something in me and making me reevaluate a lot of things about myself, making sure my devotion is on point, letting me know that I'm not alone, that I have other people who are on. Now, I know I have people my age and in my circle, in my community. We have a strong community. But when you have that almost like the blessing of a father, somebody over you, like, look, man, I got you. You're good. God has called you here. I see it. I see the anointing. I see the hand of God on your life. Though it may not look practical, it's something different. And just to receive that blessing, speaking life into somebody's life. And I'm going through that right now, and it's a beautiful experience after being shunned and ridiculed and mocked and made fun of and stay away from him and all this kind of stuff, Love covers a multitude of sin. That's what I was looking for the whole time. I could have probably bypassed years of the dark night of the soul and back and forth and who am I and, all of this kind of stuff, figuring out what I'm being rejected by my church friends, rejected by church culture. Those who even led me to Christ have said, given up on me, and those times I haven't heard from them in years. And, that's not Christ, bro. Love covers a multitude of sin. If you don't care, at least act like you do, man. Act like you do, because at the end of the day, it goes a long way. So it's really good, man. We feel like, and many people who I deal with, they have very similar experiences. No, it's not just me. This is my story, right? But it's not just me. People resonate with this for a reason because they've experienced very similar things. Even right now in the comment section, Loke Saint, Sean is commenting. He says, I feel you, Derek. I too have been rejected by many. Someone who come up in the church, somebody who was functioning in the church, and you get rejected and ridiculed and all of this kind of stuff, There's many people who identify with that. And now that we're being vocal about it, we're seeing breakthrough. We're seeing healing coming to other people, but it didn't have to be that way for you, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so a lot of people feel like because of my pastor, because of the church folks rejected me, you feel like Christ rejected you. Because these people represent Christ, supposedly, right? Up in our subconscious, they represent Christ. They are the mouthpiece of God. They are God's church on this earth. And they speak for the Father. But so you feel like God rejects you because the people reject you or Christ rejects you or whatever. But that's not the case, my friend. That is not the case. And all it does is take just a little bit of long suffering, a little bit of just being there for somebody to empower them to go forth and do great and mighty things, to empower them in their calling, to encourage them to just listen. And it's powerful. It's very powerful. So find the things that you can agree with people on and build upon that. There's many things we don't agree on that we're not going to talk about it. Why am I going to sit here and discuss, unless I think it's something detrimental or something like that, then maybe we need to discuss it. But as far as like the church teaches you to look for things that you disagree with, I'm finna look for things we disagree with. That was just some of the weirdest conversations I had with people. I was trying to find Christian friends and reaching out, and I need godly people in my life, and I would reach out, and then they would like want to go through my belief system. What do you believe about the Holy Spirit? What do you believe about Christ? Who is Jesus God, or is he the Son of God? And I gave them the wrong answer, and my head was cut off. Never heard from those people again. It wasn't the answer they were looking for. So those people are no longer in my life, not because of me, but because I didn't speak the right Christianese or the right doctrine. But you can find people in your life, man. They're out there. Don't give up. Continue to look for those people. Keep people in your life who speak into you, who bless you. Get those envious crab in the bucket people out your life, man. There's people who envy your platform. They envy your love of God. They envy your anointing, and it costs. It comes with great price. God will anoint them as long as they will be faithful with what He's given them. And I hope there's many gay people out here listening who envy. Brother Davyon's walk with God and how he is so comfortable within his skin and within his sexuality. I hope there's a lot of straight people who envy that too. And you envy that and you want to know more about his relationship with God, and you follow those steps and you just draw close to God and let the Lord teach you, let the Lord love on you and wash those word curses off of you and wash all that foolishness and stuff that you believe, which are ungodly beliefs that you've accepted as your identity, which is not of Christ. And I hope that you guys were inspired by his story, because I sure was. He's a good brother. And I love him, and we're growing together as a friend. And he has a place in my life, and hopefully you guys feel the same way. So with that, I'm going to say peace and shalom. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We're done over 3 hours. These long podcasts are good, long-form discussion. It only happens with guests who I can have a lot in common with. We can do that. Some guests, like 30 minutes is like, hey, we've gone 30 minutes. I've done asked you everything I could think of. But you get those certain people on. When you look at one of my episodes and it's 3 hours, they good people. I'm letting you know it's somebody I vouch for. I vouch. The hood vouch. The streets vouch. As the people in the jail, they vouch. They vouch for these people, man. It's good stuff. So shalom. God bless you, everyone listening. Shout out to everybody in the chat who's been hanging out with us this whole time. Shalom. If you want to support, want to get in with what we're doing, build the community, and help me continue to create these podcasts and create music and bring all this stuff to the table, courses, meditation, everything that I'm working on, please check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Link is in the description. For any level of giving, you get access to some really cool stuff, 200 plus songs, Thursday night School of the Mystics, Sunday morning Seer class, bunch of really cool stuff, Discord community. Look, we building. We're moving forward. If you want to be with us, holla. There's people who believe in you, man. So at this point, for you to stay out there by yourself, that they call a lone wolf, trying to do it all by yourself because nobody believes in you, that's on you. I've made sure that I've taken that excuse away. There's people who love you, people who care for you, people here to pray for you, no matter what you believe, no matter what you've been through, and we're an all-inclusive people. When the Israelites came out of Egypt, when they came out of their land of bondage, the Bible says it was a mixed multitude. There was some of everyone. The Egyptians were with them, and people from every tribe and tongue who they came out. It was a mixed multitude. And there's something about when the people who have differences can put aside their differences and come together and build upon a common good, which is Christ crucified for me, which is the embodiment of love. If love is the key, and we're standing upon love at the end of the day, no matter what your religion is, no matter what you believe, God is love. The Bible says that. I believe it. That's my story. Check out our Discord community, all that cool stuff. Peace and love, guys. We'll do this again very soon. And shout out to everybody traveling down this weekend. We got a prayer meeting tomorrow night. We're going to meet at my house for prayer. Got people driving from all over the country to be here. We're supposed to be ministering in Memphis. That event got canceled, and some people really wanted to meet, so they're coming anyway. And we're going to go to the beach, and we're going to hang, and we're going to build. We got people really driving from all over. Get connected. It's good people. Shalom, shalom. Peace.
Your will so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine. Your so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.